Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is just gonna be like a chill stream with one of the boys, Pragmatic Culture. I don't really have like anything to talk about. I just wanted to stream. I haven't streamed in a while. So, how are you doing, Jeff?
I'm cool. Been sitting back. I actually just to chill for myself a little bit. I actually have a debate with Godless Cranium coming up on the Non Sequitur show next Monday. So y'all can be out on the lookout for that if you're interested.
Nice, nice. What's that even about, the Non Sequitur show?
Well, it's about a lot of different things. It's just kind of a talk show, and they go over, it's mainly atheist centric, but they go over flat Earth kind of stuff. They go over religion. They go over, atheism from different angles and secularism. A couple interesting, they do a couple streams each week about some history stuff, about some sort of conspiracy theory stuff. They run the gauntlet pretty much when it comes to topics, but they're cool. I like the hosts. They're like nice guys that, they have opinions, but they won't get into it with you. They'll be good hosts. And yeah, it's a cool show.
I might be on it someday, but I'm not really interested in this atheist Christian debate, to be honest. I'm more like interested in about the role in religion and how it's played its development in civilization or in our society. I'm more interested in that.
That's pretty gay.
Oh God, is that Elmo? I don't know.
How you doing, Prag?
I'm doing good, Elmo. How about you?
Yeah, doing good. Just came back from work a couple of hours ago, so I'm kind of tired a little bit. Doing some reading for the semester, just being more involved in like reading about theology and its basics. See where I can go with this.
Are you going somewhere with this, or you're just not understanding any?
No, the most that I've read right now is just the first three books of Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, which is basically just the basics of Christianity. It's helped me a lot in trying to organize my thoughts, and it did help me a lot also in on campus. I joined a Christian group on my college campus. And
nice.
it's helping me out and like in conversations. Not I used to be that I just really didn't say anything back in like youth groups and all that. I really didn't know what to say, and now it's a little bit much more easier for me. But yeah, it's not. I haven't learned any like complicated concepts in itself. But well, I have to start somewhere. Later on, I'm gonna actually when I finish Lewis and Chesterton, and I'm just gonna keep on moving on. Probably get to the classics and just actually read Aquinas and Augustine. So yeah,
nice.
Yeah. Also, Prague, you're a faggot.
Shut up, you dumb fucking Jew spick. I don't fucking care.
Anyway, aside from doing that, do you remember the other day, Walt, that I was reading The God Delusion?
Yes.
It's such a shitty book, man.
He doesn't go to any philosophy. It's mostly about evolutionary biology, isn't it?
Well, the thing is, it's just there's a part, and I think that this dude called Matoma actually made a video about it, where he mentions a part of the God Delusion that mentions the cosmological arguments and the Aquinas' 5 proofs of God.
I haven't. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, so so Dawkins just goes like I looked for the page that Matoma mentioned. I just looked at it, and yeah, Dawkins only goes after like the sort of like the one sentence summary of the 5 proofs of God, and that's it. He doesn't necessarily go against the whole Summa Theologica from Aquinas. It's it's pretty retarded, honestly. And
I
then
know.
there's
Sorry.
the part, and then there's the part where he talks. He tries to debunk the claims of Hitler and Stalin being atheists as their atheism influencing the things that they did. Which it, here's the thing. When he mentions Stalin, he only mentions that Stalin grew up in a as an Orthodox, and that's
Yeah,
it.
well, it's like the thing they always try to do. When I saw this in, did you see who is it? Godless Engineer debate the Distributist at all?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember that. I was actually commenting on the whole situation on Twitter. That was a really cringy stream.
Oh, it absolutely was. But the reason it was is well, one, this guy was kind of unprepared for it, and so I try to cut him a little bit of slack. But the other reason was because they keep saying, "Oh, atheism is just a negative idea." So
Right.
it's like anything positive that they do, like a positive prescription on action to be taken and things like that. That's not atheism, or that's not secularism, or whatever, because
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
because it's just negative. But it's like, all right, well then, one, you can't claim it's any better than any system because in order to be better, it has to be prescribing something better. You can't just say, well, at least I'm not doing the bad because that doesn't really matter. Because if you're not doing anything better, then you're just being like, you're just baseline. At best, you're like, if there's like a spectrum and in the middle is not doing crap and you're, like a fence sitter, that's the middle. And on the
Yeah.
one end, there's like the very bad, and on the other end, there's very good. But like, if you're gonna just pick, and again, you have to avoid just cherry picking, the bad parts of religion. But even then, you should at least take responsibility for the fact that you have then created a moral vacuum in which other ideologies, such as that of Stalin's communism or whatever, have taken place. Because you can't just sit here and pretend that humans are negative beings that can function without a positive moral tenet in their life. That I think that's one of the things that pisses him off about Jordan Peterson too, because he's
Yeah.
always reminding them like, we all have a set of values by which we act. Nobody is a purely negative human being. We don't just sit there and say, well, I'm not going to do this. We say, no, I am going to do this.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I really have an issue with anti-theism is that in itself, and that's an ideology. It's only the only thing that it will offer is just skepticism, and once it just offers skepticism, and you can deconstruct anything, you're just left with nothing in the end. And like you mentioned, that only will just leave it like a power vacuum for any ideology to take over in itself. And usually, you see a lot of these secular humanists who just ended up being like other leftists in itself. Nothing, which, which let's be real, leftism is pretty cancerous. And it like so like one of the things that really just pissed me off is that from Godless Engineer from that stream is that he couldn't understand like the whole like French Revolution actually being like causing murders under the name of secular humanism, and then he just goes on say, well, that's not secular humanism does not prescribe that. It's it's a way of living, guys. And I'm like, dude, no. And how can you be this retarded to just not understand? It's not really. It's not that difficult. The point is that uh, it doesn't matter. Every ideology has its failures in some ways. One some more than others and all that. But the point is that I think Jim Jesus kind of mentioned this in his response to Nightmare Fuel is that it doesn't matter what we're going to be like. We're always going to be in war and all that. So there's going to be some justifications for war because of acquisition of resources. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, well, I think
I,
I'd like to think most atheists have moved on beyond the point of like, oh, religions cause war, although of course, not all of them will.
Hey, Alma, how you got to the part that Richard Dawkins mentioned the Jewish lobby and how it's pretty much monopolized foreign policy?
No, I just skimmed over the book mostly because I don't have time to read the whole book in itself. But I just looked at key parts from it that mostly what I checked is just the ones that most anti-deists use for their like rhetoric and all that. So
Yeah.
like the whole Hitler and Stalin, the proofs of God, and then I forgot what was the other part that I just read. but I haven't read through the whole book in itself, and because like I said, I'm trying to focus my time a little bit reading on this other stuff that I'm kind of more interested in, and
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. Dawkins is again, Dawkins should just stay just writing stuff about about his field. I think what was it, evolutionary biology was his field. I forget.
Yes.
Yeah, so like he should stick with that because that's where he's good at in itself. I mean, I still haven't read like the selfish gene yet, but from what I've heard from other people, who have read it, it's pretty much a very gives you an introduction towards what's the field? I forgot. I even forgot right now. But yeah,
Evolutionary psychology.
yeah, evolutionary psychology. It's like that, and Steven Pinker's like the blank slate. It's like that's very interesting. It's like these people are just great scientists, but their politics are just pretty shitty. They're
Well,
not.
it's
They're not substantial. That's what I'm trying to say.
yeah, no, it's funny. I picked up a whole books because one of the classes I just happen to be taking this semester is like a Psych 101 class, and I happen to, I kind of wanted to get into it and other stuff because I'd read some of Jordan Peterson's Maps of Meaning,
Yeah,
um, but I'd also wanted to pick up some other books, and so one of the books I actually picked up is called Social Neuroscience, which is an even broader term to like encompass things like sort of social psychology, cultural psychology, and evolutionary psychology and evolutionary neuroscience are in there too. And this whole book is just like, it's easily readable, but it's like constantly just throwing papers and throwing studies at you. And the summary of it is, you know, we don't just adapt traits as individuals; we adapt traits as groups. And it's very likely that to some extent, religion functions as a group trait, which increases social cohesion, increases, or decreases like negative personality affects, like, if you're highly neurotic or if you're like very underachieving or something like that, it helps eliminate some of those while also maintaining like certain emotions that make you prone to do stupid things like self-harm or to harm others and things like that. So it is a very good, social regulator and social cohesion,
yeah,
social cohesive. And the new atheists just don't want to deal with that. Forget the fact that I actually at Barnes and Noble I picked up. I didn't buy it. I literally just picked it up off the shelf, The God Delusion, to
yeah,
like. And I flipped to the section that said it dealt with Thomas Aquinas's 5 proofs, and I like read 4 out of the 5, and they were all just trash. So forget the fact that new atheists are philosophically illiterate. They're also far less scientifically literate than they claim to be as well. So they're
yeah.
they're pretty
Because
much just know nothings.
they're the only thing they learn about like from scientific literature is how to just debunk creationist arguments to that point, but they don't go beyond those things. I mean, it's just when it comes to like you said, they're philosophically illiterate. They only go after very low tier like arguments that you just that people who just only who have only been to like normal Sunday school and all that stuff. Just and what was the other thing? Theistic personification. Is that the word I'm looking for?
Theistic
Personific person
personification. I don't. Oh,
personification.
I've heard. I think I've heard it before, but I'm not exactly sure what you
Well,
mean by
basically
it.
that's how a lot of especially like Protestants try to describe God and nowadays, and that's sort of it's pretty much the most um, easy, more easily debunkable, sort of arguments that comes from religion in itself. I mean, it's not like classical theism, which is a little bit more abstract. And
Yeah, no, Protestant theology and Protestant philosophy has always been sort of abortions, and they're
hey,
partially
hey,
to.
hey, 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 wait, whoa,
Hey, shut up!
whoa. I mean,
You don't get to have an
I mean,
opinion on this.
I mean, I mean, I can agree to a degree on that, but I'm still a Protestant, so I feel like that's an attack on me.
God, you're a Protestant Hispanic Jew. Is there any part of you that's redeemable?
The Jew thing
What?
is that probably the Jew thing is not even real. Probably it's not even real because it was from the 23andMe or something like that, which they kind of Was
Oh,
it them or
23. You took the 23andMe test, and that's what told you.
no? That wasn't even me. That was my mom and dad.
Oh, well. Now we have to. Now you have to go to like Ancestry DNA, and we have to sort this out because otherwise, that's a lot of wasted memes.
Yeah, and
Yep.
I honestly I need to check on that. But like going back to the topic, it was like what was it? Yeah, so like new atheists, one of the things that really just frustrates me, especially is like you said, since they're not necessarily being scientific at all. The only way that they can approach people like Peterson and even people like Jonathan Haidt, who kind of just talks also about this stuff about the importance of sort of how to produce social cohesion and cooperative groups around. Like they only just they never go after their like scientific findings at all. The only one who kind of just went over kind of it was what's his name, genetically modified skeptic, which he only went after like a few studies of Peterson when he had that debate with Matt Dillahunty. But even then, he kind of he still misrepresented Peterson because he was saying that Peterson was completely saying that the experience sort of justifies the existence of spirituality or something like that. I think that was what he said. Now I need to see that video again. But the point is that Peterson is not necessarily like something that a lot of people miss. The point is that Peterson is not a conventional Christian. He's
If he's a Christian at all, kind of.
At the most, the way that he tries to, the way that the Christianity that he offers, it's a Christianity without the spirituality. There's no like mysticism in it. He just says that it is
which is
and yeah, that's why I have issues with Peterson because the Christianity that he offers is not Christianity in itself. It's just he takes all the structure of it and just strips the mystic what's the word, the spiritual aspect. He just strips it all off and just offers something, at least for those atheists and agnostics who are trying to look for like some sense of meaning in their life, and that's what he gives them, which is in a way at least he brings them to be a little bit more, brings people to be a little bit more culturally Christian. But again, it's not necessarily that doesn't entail that he is like on our side in the first place. And this is the mistake that a lot of people on the anti-theist side are making. It's just that they think that Peterson is on our side when he could easily be on their side, since they are the ones who are arguing that without God they can have all the benefits of Christianity.
Yeah, and he's essentially arguing for a sort of neutered form of Christianity, if he's arguing for a form of Christianity at all. Because like I know cultural Christian get a good bit, but it's sort of like I've talked with a fellow on here before, Ghost of Watts, who relates to me because he's like into Watts was like a philosopher who brought sort of like the Eastern philosophies to the West. But he tells me Nietzsche, who didn't really use any other sources, sort of had an interesting understanding of how the Eastern philosophy worked, if sort of inadvertently. And so Nietzsche being a big influence on Peterson, obviously, he sort of has this. It's weird because the way he justifies the success of his system, Peterson, that is,
Yeah.
he's always in material terms. It's always in like, oh, well, your physical well-being will better. You'll live a more like a better life. Like you'll have success. You'll be richer. And like whenever you see him talk with guys like Pinker or Harris, it's always like the default to this. It's like, well, your material well-being will be better. And part of that is kind of like the psychology he tries to improve, but he's always improving somebody's psychology with the goal of eventually just improving their material standing here and now so that they can live better materially. But at the same time, he uses this sort of idealist metaphysic to mask all that. And, he spouts like this sort of rhetoric that if you have this idealist metaphysic, you'll live a better life. And it's very weird because it is sort of a covert sort of German or Eastern idealism in a sense, because it's life is suffering, but you have to detach yourself from your body because you're not really you. You're more than just or you're not just your body, you just think you're trapped here. You can kind of separate yourself somewhat.
Yes,
And
and like we already said, like the way that Peterson is an agnostic who just uses Christian language for the most
yeah,
part.
and it's very weird because, when, especially when you're talking about that type of Christendom, because the overly idealist, and I mean that in the metaphysical sense, Christians, like sort of, what Hegel was trying to do with Lutheranism, kind of, they're the ones that end up covertly kind of being taken over in some sense, or they're the ones who are able to be used the most, because they buy into this idea too much that, the body isn't really us, we're really something greater. And Slavoj Žižek, the communist, asks a question, to Christians, kind of, it's like,
I think Zizek is actually kind of a reactionary at this point.
well, there's an ongoing debate about that, of course. But,
I mean, don't take my word that much in it. I only like seen mostly just speeches of CJ, and I tried reading some of his stuff. I still can't grasp it. Like I said, I'm still like philosophically illiterate at this point, and I'm trying to improve on that. But
yeah, no, don't worry about trying to read Zizek right now. Like, if you want to get into Zizek, start with Hegel. No joke, because Hegel is like basically his biggest influence.
Yeah,
and then just go from there.
but I even get more confused on Hegel at this
Well,
point. Yeah, I'm
don't
right
try
now,
to read Hegel directly. Always go to secondary sources when it comes to people like maybe less so Kant. Kant is a little bit more understandable, but definitely Hegel, and definitely
Yeah, that's why I bought the book on Aquinas by Edward Facer. Yeah, Edward
Professor. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so like that's why I bought the book, because I knew that I wasn't going to understand the Summa Theologica like that. So,
I'm sorry. What were you saying, Volt?
I was just my understanding of Hegel actually came from Rothbard.
Yeah, I didn't. What book was that? Was that Man, Economy, and State?
No, it's not from Mankind's Face. It's like one of his last books before he died. It was like the extra Austrian perspective on economic thought or history. Like he has a chapter detailing the roots of Marxism, which he traced back to Hegel, and
okay.
Yeah, that's actually the first time I ever heard of Hegel. Is that when I was looking into Karl Marx, I just like read that he and Engels they used to be young Hegelians back in the day, and that's how kind of I knew about Hegel. But I didn't necessarily. The only thing I just knew that he was one of the founders, or prominent figure on German idealism. But I didn't actually look into what he actually believed. That was about a year ago, man, when I searched this.
What Marxism does with Hegelianism is it flips it on its head, and it takes, dialectics was sort of Hegel's justification for an idealist metaphysic in some sense, because one of the ideas that's kind of another holdover from Hegel's Protestantism is the idea of the perfectibility of man, which is the idea that eventually man can become a perfect being and you can sort of have heaven on earth, quote unquote, which is what sort of, varying Protestant sects believe to one degree or another. Whereas the Catholic opinion is that, no, man is always going to be kind of shitty. We just have to keep doing better on earth and we can eventually make it pretty good. But Hegel sort of had this idea that eventually, sort of like achieving nirvana, you might say, if you come at it from an Eastern perspective, eventually man will be able to reach like this understanding of themselves that they are that they're not really body, they're just the idea of body, and they are something greater. They're like the cosmos itself. They are in the East they call it Brahman, which is just, Hegel calls it the absolute. It took me a second there, but it's like this idea of like the universe as a singular being greater than the whole of its parts, and its parts eventually realizing their place in the whole and things like that. So now, one of the problems with that is, of course, that you believe that, Hegel believed in sort of a natural organic process. That was his dialectics. And that's why some people accuse him of being a conservative, because he was very much in favor of sort of just letting the status quo sort of play itself out. And he very much was didn't believe in sort of forcing the next phase of the dialectic. As we achieved the perfectibility of man, what Marxists did was they sort of kept the notion of the perfectibility of man. They kept this notion that you can have a dialectic structure moving towards the perfectibility of man, but it's no longer towards an idealist understanding of it. The metaphysic is now materialist. So the ideal, the perfect man that you're trying to build up towards is something, that can be sort of manipulated through material means. And if we manipulate the material around us, be it the means of production or try to create some new communist man, quote unquote, eventually we can get to like the Marxist utopia. And that's sort of like what makes Marxism a very weird perversion of proper Hegelianism is one, it's the complete opposite metaphysic. And that leads you to all these conclusions like, well, I can force the dialectic because there's nothing really greater we're striving towards. It's just the here and now. And so I can kind of manipulate people. I can try to force the dialectic. I can possibly, this is why, you get this idea of like eugenics to create the perfect human being under which communism would work. And that's why they talk about this new communist man, because they understand that Zizek talks a little bit about this too. Capitalism, capitalism as just a phase is part of us, or that we as people right now are only endorsing capitalism, I should say, because it's something imperfect about us. And once we become perfect, we can endorse communism and endorse this perfect or live out this perfect system. And so by taking the complete opposite metaphysic, but keeping the dialectical structure, what Marxists have effectively done is given themselves justification for not only infinite revolution, but I know the phrase "by any means necessary" is often thrown around, and it's kind of used by both sides, but it's incredibly true in the sense of the Marxists, because if you believe all that is matter, then there's nothing wrong really with just taking out matter, because there's no point to it. There's only the utopia you're striving towards, and anything that's not that can be justifiably destroyed because it's not the utopia.
Yeah. That's why I think that's actually one of the criticisms, especially from a Christian perspective, from like Marxism itself being completely just a materialistic philosophy in itself that really just will not offer anything other than just more problems. So like that's very kind of interesting view though. Because I like I said, I will eventually would like to look more into Hegel and all that, but the issue is that I like I said, like I need to look into more like secondary sources, introductions to other like philosophers, especially through other philosophers, in order to like properly understand like what is he actually saying and all that.
Hey, so actually that reminds me, I'm streaming with Michelle Caitlin on the End of History by Fukuyama and the Clash of Civilization by Huntington.
Really, Volt? Really, Volt? A tranny? Really, Volt?
Well,
she's one of the good ones.
And I thought you were an anti-modernist or something.
I thought you were going to get mad at me because I'm talking about Fukuyama's End of History. I know you don't like it.
The thing about Fukuyama is that I don't know. Like I said, I never read the End of History. But I just look into the things that he believes, so that's why I'm a little bit biased here. So I cannot give a proper criticism of what he actually says. So that's all. That's literally all I have to say.
Well, he used the Hegelian Marxist framework to argue that the liberal democracy will be the final form of human government.
And he's also said something on the likes that by that point, like humans can basically select their own evolution like that, like directly or something like that. It was some weird concept that I just read about him.
Well, I mean, that doesn't sound too weird if he's really using the Marxist dialectic to try and justify what he's talking about it. But I mean, it's very, you can't really just see. Here's the thing about Hegel. And if you go back and really read it, is he knows he's not the end of history. He's just sort of identifying how it's going to continue. Yeah. But he doesn't really he gives us an idea what the end of history might look like. but he also sort of leaves it a little bit open-ended about, like, can this dialectic just continue infinitely? Are we really ever going to hit the end of history, sort of? And, obvious, as a believer in the perfectibility of man, he kind of says yes, but in the way he describes dialectics, it's a much different question. It's like, there's kind of a couple different Hegels. There's not a lot of people like to make the divide between the young Hegel and the old Hegel, and like the young Hegel was very radically anti-religious and a little bit more radically liberal, you could say, which is probably where communists sort of they take a little bit too much of their original influence from, especially when dealing with religion. But there's really a difference in Hegel when he's talking about ethics and politics, and when he's talking about his metaphysics, because when he talks about his ethics and he talks about like the state of man and the nature of man, and he talks about like theology as a tool for man and things like that, he very much makes it sound like man is this thing that can be salvaged, and that eventually there's going to be an end to his suffering and, heaven on earth, so forth and so on. But when you look at the metaphysical Hegel, it's very much not that. It's very much, history is constantly moving forward, and it's a continual process. It's a renewal process. It's almost like reading some ancient texts from the East regarding like the continual, or from like even Mesoamerica, almost like about the continual rebirth of the world, the world from like previous cycles and things like that. And so while the metaphysical Hegel leaves the question of, are we ever going to be, at the end, very open, and almost sort of suggests that it's never really going to end, the more religious and ethical Hegel sort of says, well, no, we're going to reach an end at some point. So there's sort of a bit of a divide there.
So Hegel was more, old Hegel, at least metaphysical Hegel, was more of a traditionalist in a sense, not in the and not in the trad internet sense. I like traditionalists in the traditional school, like that. Reagan and Ebola on that aspect. Like the way that he viewed history is on a cycle, like
sort of
the Kali Yuga, to say.
Yeah, almost like that. But he wasn't. This is why he gets confused. This is why he gets sort of accused of being a conservative of types, is because he would sort of shill for the Prussian monarchy at the time. And, there's a list of reasons why he would have done that. One, the people are financially backing him, and he's an intellectual at one of their more prominent universities. So, he can't really be anti-Prussian autocracy at the time. Another reason is, though, he's not, you can't necessarily call him a conservative, but he's absolutely not a radical in any sense, because he's not into this idea that, humans and this sort of fleshy material, quote unquote, are like the driving forces behind the dialectic. He believes that, the universe being this thing that's really just an idea, essentially, is a grander force. Like history is a grander force than what we can perceive it, and it's the one doing the driving. And so he'd sort of shill for the status quo, because he knew the status quo would sort of slowly morph into something different. Like the status quo was never really the status quo. It's just like the updated version of what the status quo was X many years ago. And Hegel, kind of knowing this, would always shill for the status quo, knowing that it was going to change. So he wasn't really a conservative. He just knew that change was gradual and would happen on its own, and didn't need people to agitate for it. Which is, if you try to, I've never been able to discuss that. I haven't been able to discuss this with a Marxist yet, but I imagine if I discuss this with them and sort of brought it up, I don't know what their reaction would be, because it's very much, anti-revolution, which is very anti-communist, or at least anti-proletariat. I don't know how they'd put it.
I always thought that Marxists would have actually just also sort of supposed to do the same in some ways. Like it would like be sort of an accelerationist, not necessarily an accelerationist, but sort of imitate what they do in a sense. Like the reason why they, I mean, I would guess that you will see some Marxists who will try to advance any possibility for late stage capitalism, like be already at its end.
Well, no, yeah, I mean, you're right. Like the good the good socialists and the good communists sort of aren't really agitating towards revolution or agitating towards massive change through the ballot box either. They're sort of just, well, I mean, some of them kind of are, but some of them kind of aren't. Like, the chick I talked to, Ray Murasami, she's essentially a capitalist accelerationist because she wants to try to push capitalism to its structural bounds and, then just watch it collapse because she thinks, according to the dialectic, at least the dialectic laid out by Marx, that communism is going to be the next phase. And, Hegel, while according to him, sometimes there would be an end of history, Hegel's never claimed that he had an idea what the end of history would look like. He called it his organic society or organic community, something like that. But he never claimed that his idea was like the perfect one. He never claimed to have it himself. He just said, this is what I think it's going to look like. What another radical deviation Marx kind of takes from Hegel is that, Marx knows, according to him, what the end of history is going to look like and what the perfect society is going to look like and what the perfect man is going to look like. And that makes them all the more dangerous because they know they have a very concrete plan about what the perfect situation and the perfect human is supposed to be like. And because they think they know what it is, again, it's just more justification to destroy anything that's not that. And so, you could say there are a lot of people who have an idea of how things should be, but I don't think anybody is really quite as certain that everything that isn't it has to be destroyed as Marxists. It's something very, very unique to them, I would say.
Have you looked into on the topic, the theory of, or on the philosophy of history? Have you looked at the Spengler cycles of history into his version of history of it?
I have him. I've constructed, maybe I'll tweet it out someday, but I've constructed a pretty massive reading list at this point of books I have on leftist research, books specifically written by Zizek and things that I want to read. But I have a lot of reading, and some of that is traditionalist literature. And yeah, some of that is I got Spengler's Prussianism and Socialism, Decline of the West, and The Hour of Decision is the other one. And so, yeah, I have some Spengler on that list, but I haven't read him yet. I've only been sort of given accounts of what he's said from others who have read him.
Okay, I read Spengler and his successor, Francis Parker Gaki's Imperium.
Yes, right. I have that.
You read the whole Imperium? That's like 900 pages. Dude.
Oh, that's the footnote version. The original version, like 600 pages.
But still, how do you get the time to read all this stuff in an instant?
I just make the time.
I mean, I know that you're still in high school, so you still haven't actually faced any real work in real life. So,
wow, rude.
I actually never watched a video similar to get more insights about him. He was a very spiritual guy, obviously. The point of Decline of the West, and to a lesser extent Imperium, was to critique the 19th century, to critique the materialism, the liberalism of the 19th century. Spengler and Yaki, to a lesser extent, pretty much criticized the 19th century. In fact, they criticized civilization as a whole. They saw civilization as the highest form of culture. They absolutely hated that because it's a sign of decadence, materialism, liberalism, in a sense. They absolutely hated it. They actually hated high culture in their terminology. They prefer what I would call the build up. They prefer this really honorable way of life, this rather agrarian utopia, or just building civilization. They hate urbanism. They hate cities. They view them to be corrupt. They've used it to They view to be corrupt. They view money to be corrupt. They essentially are criticizing modernity and their false gods, such as money, such as celebrities to a lesser extent. It's very interesting in and of itself. And also, Spengler was an anti-imperialist. That he hated empires. Just as I said before, it's a sign of high culture. It's a sign of decadence.
Wait a minute. You said that he was an anti-imperialist but hated empires. What?
I'm just saying his philosophy is very anti-imperialist. Like he hated things such as empire, civilization. Like he just viewed them as a sign of civilizational decay.
Yeah.
Then hold on. What about it wasn't like what about it was like the high culture he didn't like?
It's sort like he didn't really like the materialistic aspects of high culture, like this decadence, this rather bourgeois, in a sense. Like he didn't really like what was it? Like keep in mind he saw the Weimar Republic, and that was not pretty, the Weimar, that era. But what he did not like about high culture is that it's
I think that Spengler and Jockey sound like people I can actually relate to, because I mean, I guess I haven't actually read them yet, but from what I've heard you talked about, especially on group chats on Twitter, it's, I don't know, I there's something about these reactionaries and neo-reactionaries and so that I just feel like that I'm more in tune with than like modern conservative movements and all that.
Well, I think, I don't know, to maybe critique at least your description of what Spengler's position is, not like critiquing what you're telling me, but like to critique his idea sort of, is that, high culture is necessary. One of the things I offer in here attributed to Spengler, and I think the reason he hated empires was because he thought cultures had sort of natural boundaries that they were only supposed to exist in, and that the intrusion of other cultures upon others was sort of unnatural. And that's why he sort of viewed the Romanovs in a very negative light, because he saw them as the protrusion of Western culture into Russian Orthodox life, and the certain traditions of Russian heritage and Russian culture. And that's why eventually the Bolsheviks had to rise up because they were sort of like a purifying fire that it got rid of or like a parasite almost, that it sort of like kills off another parasite, and I'm thinking of it. I'm like trying to quote a stream that you guys know, Rodin, right?
Yeah.
Rodin gave me a stream. I'll share it with you guys actually in the chat. I'll have to dig for it a little bit, but a stream specifically where they discuss why Spengler, didn't absolutely hate the communists. And it's because he said the Romanovs were kind of like a parasite. But they didn't kill the tree. They just prevented it from growing to its fullest, because it was an incursion of Western culture onto the Russian tradition. And so what the Bolsheviks did was they sort of sent that, they kind of killed that parasite, but they sent the organism that is Russian culture and heritage and whatnot into a sort of stasis that simultaneously protected it from liberalism and also killed the parasite. Now, one of the things I think and that's sort of Spengler's position on it as well, from what the stream, these guys seem pretty well read. So I'll take it to be Spengler's position that, that's why he didn't mind the Soviets as much. Now, in the light of the collapse of the Soviet Union, I think Spengler might revise his position a little bit, only in the much that, you know, communism was never really going to survive, especially not economically, but even philosophically. It was a rather harsh totalitarian system that you really can't support. And what, you know, in trying to be this protective shell against liberalism to protect Russian orthodoxy, it's, you know, it's simultaneously left the people of Russia completely uncompared for like the coming liberal spiritual malaise after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And that's why you see in Russia right now, like drug abuse rates and abortions and alcoholism all are like through the roof since the collapse of the Soviet Union. And it's not just because they have access to the stuff, but because, you know, it's such a different existence. There's no nationalism. There's no spiritual being embodied in the Russian culture anymore because after the fall of the Soviet Union, you know, even though the Soviet Union wasn't itself spiritual, because it sort of tried to quash, well, it didn't sort of try, it very much tried to quash religious elements within its borders and in its satellite states, that one only emboldened those religious within it to make them stronger, and two, even those who lost their religion still found a spiritual belonging in like this sort of transcendental drive to create the workers' utopia, or like in at least like the nationalism of their country or something like that. But now that liberalism's taken over, there's none of that anymore. You see all these horrible degenerate things taking over Russia right now. And so it's, you know, even though you could say that Soviet totalitarianism protected Russia from that sort of state of being, its inevitable collapse left it wholly unprepared to deal with it. Like, at least in the West, you know, where liberalism sort of took root, even though liberalism has done a great deal to defang the people and their spirit and the culture, we've been able to learn how to deal with it and to cope with it so that we haven't become utter degenerates. Like, you know, abortion is still very much a huge thing in the West, and, you know, as is suicide and drug abuse and things like that, but nowhere near the rates that it is in Russia. And it's also, you know, there's still Christian factions which have some sort of traditionalism left to them. Like, there's, you know, everybody likes to LARP about the traditionalism of Russia and the Orthodox Church over there and things like that. But
Rodin does.
Well, Rodin does for sure. But like, if you talk to, like, I don't know if you're in True Diltom's server, Elmo, but there was this guy for a little while. His name was Caesar. And one of the things he would talk about, and I've had it confirmed by other Russians, is that, that beautiful Orthodox girl in her veil and everything like that. Well, first off, she's probably a whore. And even the ones that LARP as being sort of very traditional and very good are extreme rarities in that country. Like, everybody is like hyper depressed over there. Everybody is like
drunk and shit.
Yeah, everybody drowns their sorrows in booze and drugs. It's like, we in the West, because we don't live in it, have this sort of, especially reactionaries, have this idealized version of Russian traditionalism and the state of Russian culture at the moment, when in reality that's completely non-existent. And so Spengler might have thought that, well, it's communism, but at least it's not liberalism. But it's communism that, I'm surprised Spengler didn't identify this early on, that it was never a system bound to last, and that its inevitable collapse has left
the problem with
resulting Russian state in a complete state of liberal decay.
Okay, the problem with communism is that in itself, it's still on its basis is a modern philosophy. It's not reactionary from a fundamental basis. That's what I'd try to say. Well,
the funny thing, I know you asked Rodin to join us. He's not going to, unfortunately, because he just doesn't do streams.
Yeah, I know. He doesn't even go to VC on Discord. He's a fucking pussy. You hear me, that Rodin? You hear me?
Well, no, but whatchamacallit? It's like, there's a lot of hidden reactionary elements if you look in a lot of traditional leftism, even if you look into the school of, even if you look into the Frankfurt school, Rodin has shared with me in DMs a lot of quotes by people like Marcuse, from like the One-Dimensional Man, where they talk about the bourgeoisie liberal industries essentially manufacturing culture in order to pacify the people and make them better workers. And as a reactionary, you're like, huh, that's a really good point. In fact, I would make that very same point, except maybe not in that exact terms. And so, like, a lot of leftism is far more authoritarian and reactionary than, the left liberals LARPing as communists would give it credit for. And so Rodin has a lot of good points, is what I'm trying to say. So he's not he's not completely wrong.
I'm not. I didn't say that he's completely wrong. I disagree with him. I just think that his whole Stalinism thing is just way out of base at this point.
Just I want to move on to Yaki. Yaki is like,
well, we got
Yaki.
We got Jim here. How's it going, Jim?
Wait, did you just call me Jewy?
Hey, you're a Jew,
Jesus.
No.
Jew Jesus.
I could have swore you were like Jim Jesus.
Jew Jesus. Well, Jesus was a Jew, so I guess that works.
No, Jesus wasn't a Jew.
No.
Debate me on this. Debate me on.
I'm kidding.
Are you sure about that? Are you sure?
I'm a potato in one.
I don't know, man. I don't know, Prag. Like a month ago, you were like, I don't know. You were like, anti-capitalism is stupid, and now you're like, anti-capitalism is the way to go.
I don't think it was a month ago, but you're right. I remember those tweets. Ghost of Watts tweets them at me every now and again. But what's up, Jim? I think you've been quietly listening and hearing out my long fucking paragraphs of text. So what's up?
I was just working my mouth fedora while you were doing that. Get my mic muted. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, so Prague is, giving us a philosophy class at the moment. Yeah.
Which YouTube needs. Let's face it. There's a lot of bad philosophy out on YouTube. Very poor understanding of philosophy, to the point where it's like every time I get into a philosophical argument and I make a point, someone tries to pull out the not an argument thing, and it's like, you really don't know what you're talking about. I can just disregard you now.
Look at it, like, it's not even like just in YouTube. It's mostly just everywhere. Like today on Twitter in itself, Bolt tweeted at what's its name, Godless Cranium. What was the response again? You said that modernity is a bitch, Bolt. Yeah. But that was a response to what was like Godless Cranium saying.
Oh, he said why people fear atheism. He just responded to a tweet and said, nah, like people. I'm just saying Christians don't fear modernity.
But the thing is that that's what you said, and then like Godless Cranium just went on his mind. He thinks that you were criticizing modern technology or something like that. He did, and people pointed this out at him. Like even I like make fun of him. And it's like, yeah, man, modernity is all about like technology. It doesn't have to do anything with the metaphysical, like the decay of the society or something like that.
No, man.
Yeah. So like, and then he just tried to make the lamest excuse of saying that, well, I was just making fun of Bolt for generalizing.
I was just pretending to be stupid.
Yeah, it's fucking. Oh, I should have used that one. Son of a bitch! I didn't.
That's the one that I actually used when he responded to Michelle Caitlin. He said, "Oh, sigh. I was just responding to generalization." I just tweeted back at him saying, "I was just pretending to be retarded."
I just repeated what Pakistan the reactionary said to him a while back, that you're just a duller that's like the air and that's mental diarrhea.
And that's all he is. Like I mentioned this a couple of times about Godless Cranium. He never says anything substantial. He always just has moral faggotry on his side. He never argues. He just tries to counter signal moral facts around, and it just gets annoying.
Well, you had that good tweet before that I'm going to try to dig up, talking about like what he tweeted. Like he essentially stated that he's a YouTube channel that's just dedicated to like having people on to mock them and things like that. And like, he doesn't do any research. He doesn't really know what he's talking about. He's literally just there to mock people.
Yeah, he was he was being sarcastic on that tweet, and then but that's literally what you do. Even if you're being like sarcastic, you really. All you do is just mock people and just don't do any research at all. Like, just look at his video on communism. He thinks that, Christians can be communists just because this Pope said that, communism was okay. Well, really, like looking into communism, it's any Christian who becomes a Marxist is a heretic.
Yeah.
I'm a like that's what like any Christian will see, because Marxism is very like a materialistic philosophy in itself. It's really much incompatible with being a Christian in many aspects. Now, we can go into detail about it, but it's probably going to take long into it. But the point is that that's you can be a Christian and a Marxist is the same as saying you can be a married bachelor.
Oh my God!
But Jesus
We're
said to
def-
share things. Therefore,
Communist.
We're definitely dealing with
Jesus,
double-digit ammo here.
Jesus was a proto-socialist, guys.
Yeah, this is like the Bernie Sanders understanding of Christianity. Jesus said, "Share stuff." Excuse me. Therefore, democratic socialism or social democracy, whatever.
Now, even C.S. Lewis has said something on the likes that like Christians should like oppose usury. I think that's the word, investment and all that, and that basically the ideal like sort of Christian society will look sort of leftist. Like he does. Well, those were the words that he used. I understand where he was coming from, but I need to think it a little bit over. Honestly, the point is that he said that usury is a sin, and we shouldn't embrace like investment or something like that. That's what like Lewis said on his book on Mere Christianity. I think it was the second one. Yeah.
I should read C.S. Lewis, but I'm probably not going to read fiction anytime in my life again. So
You should go to church more, dude, because I don't know. The other day you were smoking weed for some reason.
Wait. Don't ever say that.
What?
Stop. Just stop.
What were you telling me? You were
Stop.
saying like I was writing the title, guys.
Stop.
Oh, wait, hold on. What is he saying, Volt? What is this?
No. Keep in Triller. Keep in the DMs. No.
Volt told me he was writing the title.
No.
Drugs are bad.
Yes.
This is a Christian live stream, guys. Let's keep it. But no, Bald, you should go to church more. I don't know, read more stuff on theology now that you read like everything for some reason.
I read everything because I need to read everything.
You should stop being a Protestant. That's the first thing.
No, what you should stop being
well, to be honest, I always had sympathies for the Catholic Church since I was like 8 years old because of Rocky.
Because of what?
Because of Rocky, the character.
What?
I always had sympathy for the Catholic Church because of the movie character, Rocky, the boxer.
So you watch Rocky, and that's what gives you sympathy to the Catholic Church? I'm not necessarily understanding this.
No, I'm just saying, like, he's like one of the main reasons why I always have like sympathies for the Catholic Church.
I don't remember Rocky being a Catholic though.
He's a Catholic.
I don't remember that. I mean, I don't remember that being like an.
Yeah, it's like you're an Italian. Well, actually, that's not true, and I discovered this very well. There's one exception I know of to this. I had a scoutmaster actually when I was in Boy Scouts, and I just switched troops because I had moved. And
where did he touch you? Where on the doll did he touch you?
No, but like he was. His last name was something very, very Italian, and this is Long Island, so it's a very suburban neighborhood and things like that. And I sort of just assumed, like everybody else in the church, I kind of knew because they had gone to a Catholic school with me. And that's how I found out about the troop. And so I kind of just assumed, oh, it's another Italian guy in a majority Catholic troop. He must be Catholic too. And I forget what we were discussing, but we mentioned chapel services. And I'm like, oh, well, let's just go to like the Catholic one. And it's like, they were saying like we had to go to like a couple different ones because there's like an interfaith one and there was a Catholic one and a Protestant one. And I said, well, let's just go to the Catholic one and be done with it. And and then he said, "Well, no, I'm Protestant," and I legitimately did a double take because it's like the first Italian Protestant I had ever heard of in my entire life.
Man,
That's
sucks.
weird.
That's sucky. I like.
It was a weird experience. It took me back a bit, but it's not like it was a huge deal.
Yeah, but dude, come on. There's nothing wrong being a Protestant. Come on. What's your problem? What's your problem,
The
Prag?
Protestant and the Jew are one in the same. That's all I'm gonna say.
Jesus, who is a Satanist and has no relations to the Catholic religion.
Who's a Satanist now?
Jim.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right.
Y'all motherfuckers need Satan.
That's right. I remember seeing a video about one of your videos about that. Well, it's like, Mike. Okay, so I'm going to ask, but like, what is it about him, or is there like a larger metaphysical reason, or is it just like something about him in particular, sort of like a cult of personality turned into a religion type of thing that draws you to it?
Him? You mean
him? His infernal majesty.
His infernal, or the Dark Lord, whatever the hell you want to call him.
Okay, I'm not a
majesty.
Yeah, I'm not a theistic Satanist. Those are what we would call nuts. That's what Satanists would call people who actually worship the devil. They would call them nuts. I think that's a clinical term, or pseudo Satanists. No, real Satanism, as codified by Anton LaVey, is a purely secular religion. It kind of evolved from various kind of philosophies like egoism, Rand, and might makes right. Ragnar Redbeard. Minus all the anti-Semitism and sexism and stuff.
So basically, minus all the fun parts.
No, there's a lot of good fun parts in it. They talks about how you should kind of engage in the 7 deadly sins because they're vital to your survival.
Oh, that all right. We won't make this about that discussion, but that's that ain't right, man. But
oh man.
But
mostly I kind of got into egoism, but I wasn't a big fan of some of the things that Stirner would say, especially in terms of like how he criticizes liberalism. Though then again, he also criticized socialism and communism as well. So I have some issues with that, and then also I don't think I don't think it's possible to completely unspook society. Right, to remove all the phantasms from people's minds. I don't think it's possible. So I think it's a better idea to embrace symbols and traditions and rites that aren't rooted in anything real, and just enjoy them for the traditions that they are, and just understand that they're mental phantasms. Yeah,
and that's why you should embrace Christianity, Jim.
Well, I don't like someone's. I can't remember who said it, but it was an atheist who said it, that there's a God-sized hole in everybody's heart. But I don't think that's true. I think there's a spook-sized hole in everyone's heart, and they need to fix something.
I mean, people are drawn to different things: Christianity, Islam, Hinduism. Or secular humanism for that matter. But yeah, so I understand like where you're coming from. That people have like this spook-filled heart. So that's what you said.
A spook-sized hole in everyone's heart.
Yeah.
And you need to fill it with something, some sort of tradition, some sort of thing that you kind of identify with. Well, basically, some sort of traditions that you engage in. Yeah.
Religion in itself.
I was Christian. I didn't go straight into Satanism though. That was good 20-year gap between all that. So,
man, I wish I could bring ego in here.
Yeah, because we could have a discussion about the necessity of spooks and people.
Oh man! Also, Jim, can you also define friend?
Can you invite Maria?
I don't know about friend, but I do know that logic is short for logistics.
Hey, did you know that praxeology?
Yes, praxeology determines wages, and borders are theft.
Yeah, and the reason why companies with CEOs are so successful is because they have a high time preference, which in turn leads to higher interest rates because of accelerated satisfaction.
Hey Volt.
What?
Can
I
you
would like
invite
some ranch on that word salad, by the way.
can you invite Maria the Witch?
Black buyer.
Just invite her because I want to discuss the metaphysics of rape.
I saw who is it? What's his name? Pierre Trudenk tweeted out something about her. Like, who is this chick? Why does she matter? What is her significance?
She's
Oh, it's because she's like one of the new left YouTubers. I had her on my channel like one time when she was like still like a left libertarian cap. Moreover, since then she's evolved to a left anarchist, communist, Marxist. I don't know. She doesn't read. She's also defended necrophilia. That's pretty big.
Oh, she's one of those people. wait, was she on the ground floor of that, like, whatchamacallit? This was a big debacle in left Twitter, I remember, about whether or not, like, necrophilia was actually, like, sanctified, is, like, actually acceptable according to, like, communist ethics or whatever. There was, like, some big shit about, like, and people were memeing, and it's like, yeah, bro, totally go fuck that corpse. Karl Marx, like 18, whatever. And it was just like,
I think that was what was his name? Angry Napoleon that actually said something on the likes of that. I don't remember right now.
Yeah, I think there was some like trad idiot who got in on it too. But I do remember like left Twitter discussed this for a good couple of days before it was before, you know, most people ended up kind of deciding, let's not do necrophilia.
What if the dead consents though?
yeah, right. What if the dead consent? It might have been. Now that I think about it, it might not have been like left Twitter proper. It probably was like the weird intersection between left neoliberals LARPing as leftists and actual leftists.
Oh no, her channel. She got 2,000 subscribers for some reason. She also did the Pullman being around in her server. She released naked photos of herself. Yeah, that's such a great idea. Like during there.
I mean, that's part of the reason.
Hold on, naked or just revealing?
Naked, like actual naked pictures of her.
I mean, that's the reason why Pierre kind of just changed his opinion because, you know, he just saw a picture of her with barely any clothes, and now he just says, "I just want to have sex with you."
But she's not. She's not even that attractive though. Like, you know.
I mean, in that weird way that like petite girls are kind of attractive if you're into that, I guess.
So what you're saying is that you're into that, Prag.
I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying.
So what you're saying is that you want to fuck lobsters.
Yeah, I'm the top lobster.
You just want a Rhodesian. You just want a Rhodesian wife. That's what you want.
That face when no Rhodesian GF. Yes.
Hey, wait. So, have you seen Neat Jesus lately? I mean, esotericity.
I mean, he did. Okay. Are we gonna get into this? Is this gonna be like we're gonna start just shitting on SO again? I'm
of course, I came into the stream. Everybody's got to talk about SO.
Well,
it's like last year it would have been Molyneux.
Yeah. Well, fucking, he did some dumb video. I didn't even click on it. I don't know. I guess I'm still subscribed to him out of some amount of interest, like feigning interest, and some amount of respect, because technically he was the first one to invite me onto a live stream, and I guess I sort of owe him, like, getting me out there to some degree. I don't know. But fucking, he made some dumb video on, like the non-liberal case for open borders, and it's like, this shit again, really? It's all so tiresome.
ESO is an ANCAP, right? If I can remember correctly.
An ANCAP specifically of what I suppose you would call, like, the Tuckerite division, or the Tuckerite.
Wouldn't he be a socialist then? He's a Spooner guy, like, because Spooner won about labor, agrarian romantic.
A a lot of ANCAPs like to quote Spooner without really realizing that he kind of was like a socialist, but no, like he cherry picks what he likes from Stirner and leaves or not Stirner, Spooner. Although I'm sure he cherry picks Stirner too, because
he pulled out a quote saying that Stirner was against property, and I was like, dude, the name of his book, if you actually really translate it, The Ego in Its Own, if you actually translate it correctly, it's The Unique in Its Property, and he talks about how people can own property, even capital goods, but property norms are a spook. But what really determines property is whether or not you're able to take it and defend it with tooth and claw.
Yeah, it's like Stirner's like sort of like the weird founder of might makes right combined with there is nothing but me.
I read that Jeffrey Tucker today on Twitter said that Stirner was a liberal.
Yes, I saw that as well. Which
no,
yeah, no, of course.
I mean, go tell him that.
Like the amount of times Jeffrey Tucker has been right about something like big and philosophical is like slim to none, if ever.
I don't know. I really just think the guy is just a hack. Right after I've seen a couple of things before, but it was the debate that he had with the radical capitalist. What was his name again?
Jace
Rachel. It's where I was like, oh God, this guy's hack. Like I didn't necessarily agree. Well, I kind of did agree with many things that Chase Rachel said, but the things that it was that Tucker was saying, it was like, nah, this dude is a hack. Honestly, like the guy was like saying that, well, if you're like, if you want to be with your own group, why can't you just go to your own, make your own communities, like the Amish or something like that? And then I was like thinking like, wait a minute, aren't you like an ANCAP or something? Don't you like argue that the potentiality of the free market is not on its best or something like that because of existing regulations or something like that? You do know that there's like, actual laws that kind of just force integration, or even for that matter, programs like Section 8 programs and all that. They kind of just do all this and affirmative action. They kind of just impede on freedom of association.
Yeah,
like, I would argue that if you were an ANCAP, you would strictly, point this out as saying that this will prevent them.
That whole debate was just a shit show, though. I mean, both of them were kind of being ridiculous.
Yeah,
and I really do hate that Hoppe argument that he keeps bringing up over. And I thought it was his initially because I was like, that's so stupid. Only someone like Chase Rachels could say it. Then it turned out no, Hoppe did it. The whole net taxpayer thing.
I read Hoppe a lot, and he doesn't really argue the next taxpayer thing that much.
The net taxpayer is owning the roads. I believe that was him, though.
No, like it's just like when I think of Hoppe, I usually think of what anarcho-capitalist society would look like under his system.
Not really. Like he's gotten into some, like he did argumentation ethics, which I have problems with too. Kind of the value of traditionalism to fight off like nihilism. Like he's contributed that. He's contributed like deeper kind of understanding of covenant communities. Like there's a lot of stuff that he's contributed just besides that.
Yeah, he mostly gives an introduction to all this on his book Democracy. Like the thing that he just says that if you're going to have you want to preserve a libertarian social order, then you will have to get rid of all the people who are either people who fall on the short time preference sort of thing, and that he puts people like communists, homosexuals, and
high time preference.
My bad. Yeah, my bad. High time preference. My bad. Shit, I'm just a little bit confused right now. But yeah, so basically that's what he said. You should you should do your best to just not have these people in your communities because they're going to be a liability for the long run.
I'm sorry, Jim. You have to go. Like you. Like,
oh my God! What?
Well,
yeah,
you are a Satanist. This is a Christian.
You're not allowed in the covenant community, I think is what he's saying, Jim.
Yeah,
and he's saying that I have a high time preference.
I'm not saying you have.
That's not the only thing.
I just say you got accelerate satisfaction.
Yeah, how are you going to have high interest rates without high time preferences?
You get the boot. No, I just don't let any say in this in my community covenant.
Yeah, but the whole net taxpayer thing, I don't think, at least in America, it may be different elsewhere. I don't think it's possible to be a net taxpayer in the U.S., considering all the services that we're forced to take, up to and including the military. Yeah, I don't think it's possible unless you're one of those people who are just dead set on giving the state all kinds of extra monies that you have, and I can't imagine any corporation would do. Not even Warren Buffett would do something like that.
Well, I think it's like the Alt-Type has this video where he goes over like, I don't think it's the main pull of the video, but he goes over like the breakdown of tax by the tax payment breakdown and like government revenue breakdown by race. And he brings up the fact that if you break it down by race, then you could say that whites are net taxpayers while other races aren't. And he doesn't go over Asians because I don't know if he has the data or not because they're such a small portion of the population. But I imagine Asians would also probably be net taxpayers too. And I imagine, you know, based on those general assumptions, you could break then races down into tax brackets and see which tax brackets are actually the net contributors, or if they're all net contributors and some are just contributing a little bit less or more. So I think you could have some people actually being net tax contributors. I just think it's, you know, it's dependent on a lot of things, and you'd have to really break it down to try and find people.
Yeah, but at the same time, you also have to look at the state not only takes money in taxes, but it also inflates the currency in order to pay for things.
Yeah.
And that means that they're pulling out more than what they're taking in, which means that they're providing services, albeit terrible services, more services than what anybody pays for.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think you could adjust it for inflation in some way. Of course, you know, depending on how you want to go about it, it depends from when you're adjusting inflation and stuff. But I think I'm not going to say, Hop is a good introduction to, you know, anti-democratic thought and to, you know, larger sort of like, you know, individualized reactionary thought. But it's all reactionary thought within the framework of a liberal anthropology. It's all trying to justify it through material means and through a sort of materialist standard, not necessarily consumerist, but certainly, you know, it's just like, you know,
he mostly used libertarian language at the most.
Yeah, and it's all
that's the thing
all,
that kind of interested me, because the way that he defined like the monarchy and democracy is democracy is the public ownership of government. Meanwhile,
yeah, and it's all still essentially using like the central tenets of guys like John Stuart Mill and Locke and like Enlightenment liberal values, which at the end of the day, you know, you could make the economic argument for like privately owned covenant communities, but at the end of the day, people are going to be left lacking because people don't just care about economics, and so you have to move on from just economics if you want to actually have a proper reactionary tradition built into your system and be able to make these arguments. Hop is just a good introduction to that, and like the net taxpayer argument is like a gateway drug, sort of. So to speak.
But on top of that, I don't think it's necessarily true that just because you have net taxpayers that they're automatically want to favor all the same social programs and social conservatives that Hoppe wants, and he just makes that assumption.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily the worst assumption, because usually the people who do pay the most tax end up being sort of like the people who can't get out of it with like loopholes and things like that. Like I know we say like the top 1% or so pay something like 40% realistically, but they get out of a lot more of it because of like tax loopholes, and they got all the lawyers to do stuff. The people who pay the most as like a percentage of like their real income is like, you know, you get down into the working middle class and things like that. And so I don't know. Yeah, I agree with you. It's not a flawless assumption, and there are certainly plenty of examples to the contrary, but it's a reasonable foundation, I'd say. Again, like everything with Hoppe, he's just a foundation. You have to move beyond him.
Isn't Rothbard like more like a foundation, and Hoppe is more of a logical conclusion of Rothbardianism?
Well, yeah, but like nobody's gonna Rothbard too, in another way, is sort of like a gateway drug, but you have to come from you have to have some sort of basis for it. Like the path for me, politically speaking, was weird. Like I was like neoconish because that's kind of like what my parents were, and then it kind of wove its way through. Like I was kind of like just libertarian on the economic part. Then I sort of became libertarian socially. Then I came NCAP, then HOPPA, then the rest of it, and now I'm here. But you can't. Like anything can be a gateway drug, and you could probably skip steps. Like you could probably go from being a neocon to reactionary, and it'd probably be easier if you were like a neocon with more of a tradcon bent. So like there's more that all roads lead to Rome eventually.
That's part of the reason why like a lot of leftists, when they look at ANCAPs, they just look at other reactionaries, even if they are like they're typical lowbirds in some ways, because it kind of is true. I mean, I think that they're kind of the way that they got to those conclusions are kind of a little bit, off. But yeah, like I don't even there's something about anarcho-capitalism itself that I don't even consider it to be anarchist in the first place. I mean, I don't think the criteria of anarchism is just solely based on the existence of a state or not. Like that's the issue that I have with like the name, just in the name of anarcho-capitalism.
I agree with that.
I actually, I've been trying to, talk to this to other ANCAPs, and they're like, no,
Well,
we're kind of the point is that like anarchism, like from fundamental basis, does have like certain, things. There's a criteria for it.
Well,
but this is the reason.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It sort of depends on how you define anarchy, because I've heard it, defined a couple different ways. Because it's in some cases it's the abolition of all hierarchy, which would mean yes, anarcho-capitalism is not anarchism because there's still hierarchies embedded in that system. And in other cases, I've heard it, and this is how Bad Mouse defined it when he did his video on like the history of anarchism. He just defined it as the abolition of all unjustified hierarchy. Right. And I think with that little caveat, you could almost kind of make the case that anarcho-capitalism is anarchism, because you could claim that capitalism is a justified hierarchy. I mean, that would be where the debate would have to go if you wanted to defend anarcho-capitalism as a form of anarchy. What I remember a lot of ANCAPs doing, including myself, is just saying, well, all right, if this isn't anarchy, we don't give a crap. We're still going to advocate for us and advocate for this and call ourselves anarchists just to piss you off. So, I mean,
yeah,
it depends on the anarchist. It depends on the ANCAP you're talking to.
Yeah, but again, but there is a specific criteria for like anarchism in itself as a philosophy, and that's where like, because it is anarchism in itself, it is a left-wing philosophy from its fundamental basis. And even though like Badmouth says unjustified hierarchy, but does Badmouth believe that there is such a thing as justified hierarchy? Because
Badmouth's not anarchist anymore.
He's not an anarchist anymore?
No, he's not. He's like a
really
like
yeah, he's a tanky now.
He's a wait. You're fucking with me. He's not a tanky.
No.
Yeah. Is he like Marxist-Leninist or a Stalinist or a Maoist or what?
I think he just calls himself a Marxist.
Like a Marxist in the classical sense?
Yeah. I guess. I'm not sure. I haven't been following him that closely. After that, I kind of got, before he made his transition, I kind of got bored and stopped paying attention to what he was saying.
On the anarchist bit, that reminds me of a conversation I had with this hardcore anarchist. Well, she's like a mix of anarchist Marxism a little bit. Well, in her own words, she appreciates the works of Marx and another anarchist. She's in your Discord, Jim. Her name's Rogo. Or
yeah. I've seen her.
Yeah,
she's been kind of putting her foot in her mouth when it comes to Stirner, though. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's like the thing about her is she rejects, like she really wants to radically change society. Like she just views people like she just views liberals, conservatives, even libertarians as reactionaries in the Marxist sense of the word. It's just people who are just trying to preserve the social order. Like
the current social order.
Yeah, just like this. She just wants the radical reformation of society, or the outright abolishment of just any social hierarchy, social government or anything. It's very interesting, but it's also kind of frustrating to further the conversation with, because it's kind of hard to it's kind of hard to have a conversation with that type of hard positioning on social orders, on the state, on that. So that's why I'm just being like this is why I've been very selective what I talk to her about through our DM.
That was just gonna say, like, yeah, she defines like pretty much everybody. Everybody who's capitalist, I guess, would be a reactionary. And I think once you kind of loosen the term reactionary to mean that broad of a term, it's kind of almost meaningless to bring it up, especially as a pejorative, where you're just like, all right, most everybody is a reactionary, and it doesn't have that same oomph, because like the reason why you can get away with, or not get away, but the reason why like you can call someone a Nazi and it has that impact is because how many Nazis are there? Like a handful, and they did something really terrible. So, you know, you can really paint someone bad with that label. But if you're going to define everybody as being a Nazi, then it doesn't matter anymore, right? Same thing with reactionary.
The thing about reactionary is that in some ways this started as a pejorative by the Marxists themselves back in the early 20th century. I remember that my dad, when he talked to me about the time that he was facing against like actual Marxists, and this was back in Bolivia, and he and his like friends who were like involved in politics actually did look into Marxist literature. Like they went to I think what was they just went to a priest who actually had all the literature and they studied about it, and then when they faced them. When they faced actual Marxists they just called them reactionary. So that's how like it was mostly perceived as just a pejorative to just anyone who is not a Marxist, or it just favors the status quo or something like that. It's just
like, that's kind of annoying. Like when it gets that to a while, like it's just like it's a way to limit the conversation. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think it's kind of like going back to Hegel being labeled a conservative sometimes. It's like, you know, anybody who isn't for like genuinely radical change, be it radical change in the revolutionary sense or radical change being initiated through like some sort of legislative action, you're labeled a reactionary because it's, you know, just because you're not favoring radical change. And it does water it down, and it's been watered down. Like, you know, I don't hear most people being called reactionaries, probably because, you know, the common double-digit IQ pleb isn't going to know what a reactionary is, and so it's not going to be an effective insult. But, you know, people don't give a crap about being called a Nazi now, pretty much, especially on the right, because it's kind of just, you know, they're used to it. You know, Trump is a Nazi, friggin' Ted Cruz is a Nazi, you know, even though he's Hispanic, whatever.
You know, everyone who, you know, wants to do something, it's a fascist or something like that.
Yeah, it's like, you know, it's lost all meaning and it's lost all zing. And I think it's good, at least from our perspective, because, like, you know, when we call people communists, it's never really worked before, because everybody always shrugged off communist.
But that was the fault of the boomers.
Yeah, it kind of was the fault of boomers. Like there was you had a legitimate case for it back in the 60s and the 70s. Now, you know, it's after the Reagan eras, it's kind of worn off. But now it's actually coming back to be effective, because you can look at Antifa and say, no, those are actual communists. And it's a
narco-communist, guys. I mean,
yeah. Well, it doesn't fucking matter. It's got communism.
How come Antifa? They're the real fascists.
Yeah. Oh my god. I fucking hate that nonsense.
Democrats are the real racists, guys.
Yeah. But like,
Hitler would be a Democrat if he was around today,
because he was a nationalist socialist.
Like Jackson, he was a Democrat.
Oh my god, Jim, did you see Death of a Nation?
No, I don't have to. I just heard all the stupid shit that was in it.
Yeah, no, I saw that. I saw that too, but I wanted to go see it. I haven't. But oh my god, it's such. I hate boomer tier Dinesh.
We should watch it. We should watch it together, like in a rabbit room or something.
I don't know how to use Pirate Bay, so I'm ripped.
I mean, you don't need Pirate Bay. You just need to look for a link, whatever link that has the like that has a movie in it, and that's it. To be honest, that's all you have to do.
Dinesh D'Souza is a cancer.
He really is. He really is.
And so is PragerU. So is Crowder.
Well,
Shapiro.
I'm just gonna shill for Crowder because I think to a lesser degree he's a cancer. But he can still reasonably be considered a gateway drug and not too much of a gatekeeper. Like Prager and D'Souza and Shapiro, yeah, they're all gatekeepers. To some degree, Crowder isn't, and I give him credit for it. So he's not the worst of it, but he can be up there. It depends on what topic he's talking about.
Right.
Like I'll listen to Shapiro, but I'm not really interested in like his opinions on things. Like fuck all that. The only time I really care about anything that he has to say, and the reason why I listen to his show is just to hear what his take is on what's going on in Washington. Anytime he deviates from any of that stuff, I'm clipping next 30 seconds, next 30 seconds, next 30 seconds. Okay, he's done.
I used to watch.
Well, my wife is a doctor, though, so therefore I'm white.
Yeah.
Therefore I'm right, Jim. So.
Guys, did I mention my wife's a doctor? Okay, gang. Listen, so the Nazis were basically Democrats, okay? And if you don't believe me, I mean, the idea that they're not Democrats, I don't know what to say to you.
That's scary good, Jim. Are we speaking with one of those secret fellow white people currently, Jim? Are you a fellow white person in Echoes?
Hello, fellow white people.
You're a fellow white people in apparently the same way Elmo is a fellow white people. Or actually, he's not fellow white people. He's hello, my fellow Hispanics. Is
hola, fellow white people.
Hola, fellow Hispanicos.
Viva la raza. La raza blanca.
Oh my god. I'd love to just someday find out that like La Raza has been secretly infiltrated by like some sort of like tribal takeover. That would be the funniest shit.
Like the KKK being infiltrated by a bunch of Hispanics.
Yeah, that'd be some shit.
Actually, there's a movie about that. He's not Hispanic, he's black. That's a real life story about.
Oh, you're talking about Black Klansman?
Yeah.
I want to see that.
It looks interesting. I saw. Did you guys see David Duke do his response on JF's live stream?
I heard that. Yeah.
No.
I didn't watch the whole thing, but from what I heard, it sounds like David Duke's part of the Klan never actually committed any violence, or at least never never directed any violence. At least Duke never directed any violence himself. Yeah. And it sounds like the FBI was sort of just tapping him and doing shit, with him anyway, and they were taking shit out of context for the movie. Is sort of like the gist I got.
They were also winking. I guess I talked to one of my friends who I'm starting a podcast with, and we were talking about that movie. I guess he went and saw it, and he said that there was a couple of times where they were like winking and nodding about how bad Trump is, and one of them was saying, someone went up to the black guy and said, like, there's going to be a day where someone with David Duke's ideology is going to be in the White House. Obvious, like current year wink, like yeah. Trump, yeah.
It's kind of hard to imagine that he was in a political office and that Rothbard endorsed him.
Did he endorse Duke? Oh yeah, that's right, he did.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting.
Yeah, I remember that Zach Cap on Twitter. Like he was saying that Rothbard was a racist because he endorsed David Duke. Well, I'm just like, well, I don't know the specific, but I would understand why Rothbard would endorse David Duke, but for entirely different reasons.
Yeah, it was all about tactics. Rothbard had a really bad understanding of tactics. Always have.
Yeah.
Well,
he started out like reaching out to the left anarchists, and they were like, "Get the fuck out of here." Then after that blew up in his face. Then he started doing the paleo stuff, but before he could see that blew up in his face, it kind of blew up in his face too, though.
Well, he started off by endorsing David Duke, which of course was a mistake because right, but like he was also good friends with Pat Buchanan, and he'd go the way of like Ron Paul eventually, things like that. So I mean, it worked a lot better. Someone's echoing right now. Who's echoing? Is that you, Volt? Hold on. All right. Well, whatever. The echo's gone now, but It worked better for Rothbard than, obviously reaching out to the left, which eventually made him realize that, the left was completely unviable, even if they happened to agree on some social issues, which even then Rothbard went back to change. So Rothbard was a quick learner, at least to some extent.
Yeah, and the thing is that right after he died, Hoppe kind of just went on, building up on those things, where he left off. And I kind of disagree on Hoppe on calling Buchanan like a national socialist, because that's the issue. Like a lot of libertarians, is that once they advocate for a policy that requires some regulation, they're essentially just a socialist by that point. But there's no, I don't think there's completely anything wrong to just try to form alliances, especially for those who are like not on the same camp, but at least on the same like realm of the political spectrum, to say. Because that's the thing about like I think that most descendant right wingers, and that will include certain anarcho capitalists, and aside from like neo reactionaries or something like that, there needs to be like some, I don't know, so you can't go along doing this like alone. And I think that maybe Rothbard had the right idea on this. However, I think that what Hoppe said later was that libertarians need to become more conservative. Now that's an interesting. The things that he gave for being like conservative is that when he said that, he was talking about that they should be more for the natural order. That's what he said that's what he meant when he said that libertarians need to be more conservative, and that the natural order needs to be like preserved and all that. And then when he said the natural order, he said that the logical extension will eventually lead to anarcho capitalism. So, and that's why that's why he will later talk about like stuff like the physical removal of leftists. Although that's to be, I think that he was, in a way, he was being hyperbolic, but he did say that in certain specific cases you will have to get these people out of your own country. So that's what he meant when he said that they should be more conservative. And eventually that will, I don't know, in some ways that will be, I don't know, I guess in some ways he didn't suggest it. Rothbard was the one that suggested alliances. Hoppe, I don't think that he wants alliances, especially now, since he thinks that Trump is a warmonger or something like that. So he doesn't see libertarians and MAGA people being on the same side anymore. But I think that there should be some form of a alliance, even if it is temporary.
Well, I forget who said it, but I think it was one of like the Catholic people I interact with on Twitter. Like libertarians, especially like those who buy hard into the nap, like to LARP real hard about knowing natural law and like natural order and stuff like that. In reality, they know nothing of it, because the natural order isn't this sort of like Kantian like non-contradiction fetishist philosophy. It's like, where it's like, oh, I'll just smoke weed and have gay butt sex, and because it's not hurting you, it's okay. That's the natural order, guys. That's natural law right there. It's like, no, you have no fucking clue what you're talking about. Natural law is what is in accordance with nature. It can't just be something that's self-referential. It has to be making appeal to something higher, something that represents divinity. And that's why Christians are the ones who really understand natural law, because they make reference to God, who is logos, the thing from which all being flows, all goodness, all order, all rightness flows from him. And so that is, being that he is the source of nature and its order, he is what you need to appeal to in order to have a consistent natural law. And so you're not going to get that with fucking libertarians. And it's like, I want like gay married couples to own AR-15s to protect their weed plants, like fucking Austin Peterson.
Yeah.
Oh, right. That reminds me of a conversation that this guy from the Mises Institute, his name is Chris. He runs the Historical Controversy podcast series. He was on the Academic Ages channel, and he was briefly going through his disagreement with Hoppe, Walter Block, and he mentions, for some reason, they got on the topic the alt-right and white nationalists. And Hoppe got brought up since he's like sort of like the harbinger of the Dark Enlightenment, so to speak. And he mentioned that Hoppe actually caused the split between the paleoconservatives and libertarians. And just that's like a little bit of history on the paleoconservative and libertarian movement during the 90s. I don't know how things are right now between the paleocons and the libertarians, but I think things are still pretty connected, but they still disagree on trade, still disagree on some access to foreign policy and economic policy, but they're still closely knit. They're still closely together.
Well, the thing about paleocons, especially the Pat Buchanan types of, is that, well, on trade, I would agree that they're not very good on it. But like we mentioned this, like the foreign policy aspect, it's not necessarily. Pat Buchanan has already said that America can never be isolationist. It never was isolationist. However, it did have some level-headed foreign policy that didn't cause the same problems as the neocons' foreign policy. And so there's never, I don't see the thing about paleo libertarians, since a lot of them are still in some ways ANCAP. They're not going to support any, like, they're not going to be like involved in the actual politics, or at least I don't see them being like like most ANCAPs don't even vote and all that. They're not necessarily. I don't see a lot of them being very interested like in actual activism. And to be fair, I don't even see the descendant right wingers doing the same thing. Only very few actually, but yeah, that's kind of the issue right now at the moment.
Yeah, I've really moved away from the whole Rothbardian kind of tradition when it comes to libertarianism. I'm much more of a David Friedmanite. Once I started actually understanding philosophy and ethics and stuff, and I was just like, yeah, the NAP is kind of garbage.
Yeah. Well, like fucking like libertarians who don't vote are the same people right now, or equivalent to the same people who are saying, we should leave Twitter now because they're whatchamacallit, they're banning right wingers, so we have to take a stand. Like, no, make them kick you off. Make it as hard as them for possible. Don't do their job for them. Don't give them license not to care about you because you're just gonna abandon shit. It's like the same rationale for why you should vote. Like, if you don't vote, government doesn't have to care about you because you're never gonna change anything. If you vote, at least you're trying to change something, no matter how effective it is. And so it gives, some candidate somewhere license to care. Like, don't let them not care. That's a dumb strategy.
Here in the state of Nevada, we have this is the only reason why I started voting again. But that I abandoned like the principle of non-voting a while ago. But the reason what got me back into it again is because in the state of Nevada, we have a none of the above option, and I just check it down the line. I skip the judges because I don't know anything about the judges, or unless I have like some sort of voter guide that lets me know. I just skip the judges part because there's none of the above for them.
One thing that I found like very infuriating right now, and especially in the right wing, is that most of the people who have like the right ideas are not like I mentioned, they're not necessarily doing any activism at the moment. So that's why you can't even get the right people in office. That's why, like at this point, it won't seem that that effective to actually vote if you're not going to get the right people, in office and get out there and promote them in the first place. And this is where a lot where the alt right kind of failed. They failed for a lot of reasons, but this is one of the main reasons is that they never actually went out there. A lot of them didn't actually did the actual activism in the first place.
You're talking about like real world activism?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, go out there, promote politicians to actually advocate for policies that are essentially nationalistic and more like in favor of like the American, in favor for Americans and all that, and not don't do like the college Republicans, which what they're doing just individual liberty and free markets, and that's not the priority at the moment. Because the thing is,
go ahead.
oh no, you can go.
I was just going to say I completely am on I'm on Ryan Falk's kind of side on this. I think those rallies were the reason why they failed. Once they actually started going out in the real world, that's why they kind of died off.
Oh yeah, totally.
Oh yeah,
Because it made them look really bad, and you had people that were jumping in front of the parade. Jumping in front of the parade and pretend like they're leading it, like Cantwell and like Richard Spencer, who are like cancerous. To put it, like they have the touch of shit. Like everything they touch turns to shit. Like they came to Cantwell came to the Free State Project and was it Free Keene? Fucking ruined it. Got all over it. Then when I heard that he was going alt-right, I was like, good riddance. Bye. I don't have to deal with that anymore.
Hey, Jim. Jim, since you use public roads and public police, it's perfectly okay for me to kill you. You know,
right? Like that's a logical conclusion of Cantwell's kind of argument for killing cops. Is that even if they don't arrest anybody, they still take government funds, which means they benefit from services that would require us to get more to get taxed. Therefore, it's okay to kill them because they're stealing from you. It's like, well, you can use that if that's your reasoning for wanting to kill cops. Why can't I just kill you because you drive on the road, you wear down the roads, and it requires me to pay more in taxes because of it?
You're bringing on anarcho-capitalism, dude.
Is Cantwell still like buying into that BS? It's like, oh, we need to form the ethno-state so we can get to Ancapistan.
Yeah, that's the stupidest fucking thing in the universe.
Is he still into that? I didn't know he was still into that.
Yeah,
because like
he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't change much. I mean, he's. I honestly I'm starting to think that the dude is like a agent provocateur.
Well, it's
he is a Fed though.
All right.
Yeah, well, yeah, he's a snitch for sure.
I don't look. I'm not gonna say that he's snitching or that he's doing anything because
you used to be a fan of him.
No, I'm still kind of a fan of him because watch it.
That's even worse.
Well, hold on. Give me a chance here. Hold on. As far as we know, all he's doing is literally work, or what he did do. I don't even know if he's still working with the feds or if like it was just a deal while he was like being sentenced. But whatchamacallit, all we know that what he was doing was he was trying to help feds identify members of Antifa and trying to get them outed. Like they did. It's not like they were like trying to get into his shit or anything. It's not like they were trying to get into his list of email or whatever. And like all he was doing was trying to identify people to like name in the opposite crowd. And one of the guys, like they eventually found one of the guys who punched Kessler at Charlottesville, and they tried him and he was found guilty, but they only fined him $1. So it's like, for all we know, that could have been Cantwell's doing. It's not our fault that the courts are run by them and fucking pass down slaps on the wrist for people who support their agenda. But
there's a couple of things. Like, so first of all, that's not all he did. He actually did reveal some information on that list, at least to a reporter, or at least used it to confirm someone's identity. He used to be in part of the alt-right, Ricky Vaughn, right? He assisted in the doxing. He didn't dox, but he assisted in the doxing of Ricky Vaughn, right?
Okay, I'm not too up on that situation, so I'll take.
Ricky Vaughn. Yeah, I guess some reporter found out who Ricky Vaughn was, and then they contacted Christopher Cantwell because they knew that he didn't like him, to confirm whether or not that was his ID, and he checked and confirmed
that. That whole incident was pretty shitty, but I agree with you there. He did something stupid there, I think that's separate from him being a Fed.
And then the other thing was he called himself an FBI informant, right? That's not FBI informant isn't someone who goes and says to the FBI agents who are investigating him and give them information regarding his trial, his criminal trial. That's not called being an informant. That's just talking to the feds about your particular case. I think he was just using that as a front to explain away why he might be a Fed. I don't know, but everything just seems a little bit shady. And from him going way back when he was advocating killing cops, that's definitely an agent provocateur type thing that agent provocateurs do. And then you have him doxing an ex-member of the alt-right, and then you have him admitting that he's an informant. It doesn't help his case much. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree. He's done some stupid stuff, and he's said some stupid stuff. But one, I think I think the thing he did with Vaughn can easily be explained away kind of as just a personal beef and him being sort of like a meathead, like, oh, why are you counter signaling me? And like, this is that was his idea of like trying to like unify the movement, which is a position he's now like, I've been catching up on recent episode. It's a position he now really no longer endorses because he sees that the left is by, not separating themselves from Antifa is actually suffering. And so he's kind of like, all right, well, if Republicans scorn us, but we're still spreading the message and helping them, then I'm willing to accept that scorn. So that makes me think at the time it was an actual genuine position he did hold. Otherwise, I don't think he would have done it. On top of like, again, with the last thing you pointed out about him calling himself an informant, that could just be him being a meathead and aggrandizing. It could mean he's actually an informant of what, though, I think is the big question, because the question of what he would be informing is like, I don't know why he would be like giving the feds anything of his own, because like, I'm not like, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, what would they be offering him? It's like, oh, you give us the name of other alt-writers, we're going to like give you a deal or something like that. It seems weird to me. And then, but other than that, like, crap. What was the other thing you mentioned?
They're killing cops.
Oh yeah. Well, fucking, you have siege tards fucking spewing that all the time, and I mean, maybe they're feds too. I don't know, but
I'm not saying.
See, the thing about Chris Cantwell is he's crazy enough to make you believe that all of these things are completely genuine, and that either means he's a really, really good Fed, and there aren't too many of those, or he's genuine in all of his beliefs.
Well, Hal Turner was pulling it off for a whole decade.
I mean,
but see, here's so like, I'm not saying that this is like definitive proof that he's a Fed. What I'm saying is there's a lot of evidence that is pointing to it, and his arguments against it don't really hold much water.
Yeah, he's not helping himself because he's a big fucking lug and he's an idiot sometimes. But yeah.
So let's go to Richard Spencer. Hey, I'm my name is Mo.
Don't ruin it, Bolt. Don't ruin it. You're ruining it already.
My name is Mo. Mo Lester.
That could have gone better if you just showed the picture.
I saw the alternative hypothesis kind of expose on Richard Spencer, and it was one of the greatest things. I'm liking Ryan Falk again, and I never thought I'd say that, because just seeing how he like drove his previous channel into the ground. What was it? Fringe Elements.
Yeah, now he's just given up pan-Europeanness of basically.
Yeah, he's black-pilled.
Yeah, it's some way. Like, I already understand where he's coming from, because I was already like, I understand like his position on that, because I sort of had the similar view. I mean, I'm not white, but the thing is that my view like on white people trying to people like the alt-right trying to see if they can get like the white consciousness, something going or something like that. That's I don't see that sort of like happening. I mean, white people at this point are not responding to the instincts of self-preservation. And I noticed this even when people I talk to, like white people that I talk to about some of these topics, is that there's no like there's no way that you can try to get this sort of respond to an instinct of self-preservation, or at least in this or at least in the sort of a we are the white race and we are family, like that. You're not gonna get it like that at this point. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
Have you seen the distributive exposés on the alternative hypothesis that his friend Sean Last?
I saw Stardust did like a conversation with Sean Last that was kind of interesting.
I saw his video on diversity. Probably doesn't hurt social cohesion. I thought that was pretty good. Like, I thought that was like really hardcore honesty, because that's such like a common talking point on the dissident right.
Well, I think the Distributist did like a sort of after action report of everything. And I think the Distributist kind of got it right when he said these people really didn't have any, Ryan Falk has consistently made it known that he is a materialist metaphysically, and that he doesn't believe in any objective moral good. And so really he didn't have any principles beyond, well, I want this ideal society. And I look at whites and I think, okay, whites are going to give me this ideal society, so I'm going to be a white nationalist. And I think he sort of, because he didn't really have any underlying principles beyond that, when he ran into information that countered this thought that he reasonably couldn't dismiss quickly, he immediately became blackpilled and immediately abandoned like all his sort of previous beliefs, because he's so wishy-washy about them in the first place, and he doesn't really have any strong convictions. And so
he never had any like like the dude was all over politics, like he said that he used to be like a neocon, like an actual neocon, like, you know, that he wanted to spread democracy around the world and all that.
Yeah,
and then he went on to be
for a while.
Yeah, and then he went to be on a Marxist, and then he became an anarchist mutualist, and then he just went to just go. He really just went all around there.
Yeah, he went to being a libertarian, and then he went to being a fascist, and I don't know what he is now.
Yeah, like he's that's the thing. I can legitimately say that, you know, throughout my political journey, while it hasn't been as radical as Ryan's, it's always remained on sort of the right side of the political compass. I've always sought to, like, you know, justify my political beliefs from like the transcendental framework of my religion, because I've never not been Catholic, and I've never not been, you know, very Catholic.
Right.
And so I've had sort of this idea of, like, you know, is this, you know, sort of what would Jesus do in a weird political sort of sense. But Ryan Falk, because he doesn't have that, is just trying to go from, you know, ideology to ideology to see what works, to see what gets him his utopia. And I think he's like, because of this, any data that he sees that changes his mind quickly, that he can't dismiss, is like a black pill to him. And, you know, it's like someone like that. Like, I was never really interested in Ryan for his specific ideas. Like, he was always a data mine to me, really. Like, and that was it. And so, to briefly summarize what the distributist kind of said, you know, you really just can't trust people like this, because they have no core values. They're just in it for their utopia or their 5 minutes of fame or whatever it could be. And because of this, you know, you have to take everything they say with a grain of salt. Like, there's, you know, even if you might agree with them more so now, you know, rest assured that the second they find more data that, you know, dismisses their thought, they're going to switch again. And so, you know, it's just like, even if you agree with him now, don't plan on agreeing with him for like more than 5 minutes, because, you know, it's just not going to last.
You forgot one specific detail why you shouldn't trust Ryan Falk. And that is that he's a sodomite.
That too, yes.
Wait, he's gay?
Yeah.
He is, yes.
Yeah, he used to be an escort.
Yep.
Wait, can we trust Naked 8 then?
Nope. You can't trust no sodomite. Nope. Not one.
Yeah. There was I remember way back in the early days of YouTube and Capistan, back when he was still Stodels.
Naked 8?
There was like a big thing. I don't remember the specific details, but I think it was something along the lines of Aaron 0883, who's since kind of unlisted all of his videos. Had like basically like a back and forth with him, and then it ended up turning into Ryan Falk threatening his business somehow.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so there's issues with Ryan for sure. There's no doubt about it.
But Elmo,
but the thing,
like I remember the first time I got kind of exposed to any of this stuff, like on the internet. I mean, outside of just like, oh, you stumble on the KKK or the Nazis website or whatever, was when the Observer, who goes by Individual Autonomy now, I think that's his name now. I don't know. He may have changed it. I don't follow him. Invited me on to their Skype group way back in like 2011 or something. And like, and they wanted to talk to me about stuff. And this was when I was still kind of like slowly absorbing Molyneux's bullshit, which I quickly like left like almost immediately after that. But anyways, but they wanted me to talk about anarcho-capitalism, and they were doing that little thing that they normally do, like where they ask a series of questions to try to get libertarians to abandon it. But like the whole entire chat thread the entire time was just like constant like racial slurs the entire time. And it was, and which by the way, like, you know, I came out of 4chan, like I used to hang out with like W Hat and Woodbury and Second Life and shit. So like, you know, those terms don't bother me, but it was when it's a constant stream, it goes from like, okay, this can't be chalked up to humor anymore, you know. And I ended up just kind of like, yeah, I'm skeptical of these guys now. Yeah.
I mean, I think you should have people should have been skeptical with Molyneux when he said that you should disassociate with family members who thinks that, you know, taxation is a good thing.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
Molyneux's always been trying to start his own cult. in some sense or another, and it's worked to, you know, a varying degree. Like, I think he has a strong following, but I don't think, you know, have you ever read his abortion of a philosophy, universally preferential behavior, whatever the hell it's called?
Yeah, it's basically just like mangling Kant and the NAP and cramming them together.
Yeah, it's like, you know, it's all separate. It's the NAP with sort of like extra steps that he's trying to disguise as justifications for it, and it's dumb, and it's like it's trying to beat Peterson before Peterson a little bit with like some reference to like myth and tradition a little bit, but it's all like Enlightenment era tradition, and so it's not really tradition. It's what liberals want to call tradition, so they can pretend that Europe was always this happy sort of proto-egalitarian place. But
yeah, I think I remember something about rationality rules that actually make a video debunking the universal preferable behavior or something.
God,
yeah, a lot of people have. David Gordon has too. Like,
I hear that name. I hear rationality rules, and I think, oh, he's like one of the anti-theist crowd. And I can only imagine it's probably, I would probably disagree with rationality rules as he's debunking this philosophy that's absolute trash more than I disagree with universally preferential behavior. And the thought of that just infuriates me. Like, knowing that there's these philosophical morons out there. But trying to like debunk other philosophical morons, it's like your IQ together could fucking freeze a tray of ice cubes. Stop.
I mean, you could watch this video if you want. It's still up there. I mean, but yeah, I don't like rationality rules, especially he did also
just to see if it's longer than like 25, 30 minutes. I don't know. I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna angrily tweet at him. I don't know.
Yeah, the thing is,
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so like he did a video on Aquinas, debunking Aquinas. I forgot what it was, but he was responding to a PragerU video, trying to interpret Aquinas, trying to teach Aquinas, and yeah, so that's the first like red flag on that. And then he says that it may be PragerU that's saying this, but it's essentially the same argument. And no, it wasn't. It wasn't. Literally, wasn't the same argument, because it started out with everything has a it started with the sort of the bad representation of the cosmological arguments and the
I forget who, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah. I think I saw either it was either like the distributist classical theist or Mauritian struggle did a response to that video, and so I know what you're talking about. But yeah, no, none of them can actually debunk Aquinas, because none of them have ever actually given more than 3 seconds of thought to Aquinas.
Wait a minute, now I remember. I don't think it was a cosmological argument. It was something else. But he basically it talked about some of the concepts of potency and all that. Well, he didn't really understand some of them, and even then, the PragerU video actually did misrepresent Aquinas. So
yeah, it was an all around bad video, because Prager doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about.
But the issue was that
the alt-right are really
rules.
Yeah, it's like that shit.
But the problem was that rationality rules said that it was essentially the same argument, so that's where he fucked up in that aspect. So. Yeah,
like the thing with rationality rules is that he always say this is a logical fallacy, therefore it's wrong. This is a logical fallacy. Like, he spits out these logical fallacies saying this is about just somehow validating his argument, and it's like,
yeah, it's the fallacy.
Yeah,
It's just
No,
Like
it's very
everything that's a lot.
interesting.
I used to do that a lot too, admittedly, because when I was, hyper libertarian, and I'd say, well, no, this economic argument doesn't work because logic. That was my wheelhouse. It's like, oh, this is this fallacy, and this is this fallacy, and it's like, but I didn't. And looking back on it, it's kind of cringe. But I realize now that you can't really. Economics isn't a game of logic. It's more of a science, no matter what the Austro-libertarians try to tell you.
Oh, actually, you say it's a science, but they just view
It's the dismal science.
they view economics as a science, but they just view econometrics as worthless. They view statistics to be as economic history. They just essentially use economics as a statistical junk science.
I will agree that econometrics are kind of garbage, but I think the kind of Chicago school is a little bit better. Like you start from first principles, you work out kind of how things should work logically, and then you test it against the real world. Because unless you do that final step, you could theorize all you want about something that could be not true.
Yeah.
I mean, from first principles, you can take something like geometry, like Euclidean geometry, and there's parts of the universe where Euclidean geometry does not apply.
Oh, I probably should ask Lance about Paul Volcker, since he was like the monetarist of the Fed back in the late 1970s.
The Al Roker?
Paul Volcker.
It's the Al Roker. I was really? No.
Paul Volcker. I probably should ask him about Greenspan, what he did. Like, I know, like, I haven't met anyone who actually liked Greenspan yet.
Whatchamacallit? I think
Doesn't Lamps like Greenspan?
I don't think so. He says he's pretty bad politically and saying like a bunch of stupid stuff.
A lot of economists are bad politically, to be honest. Like, I don't know. Even if they contributed in a very positive manner on the field, but some of them they don't have like very well established politics outside of that.
By the way, like normies love Greenspan.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Well, it's part of it.
He tried. He really did a good job.
Well, he's like he's a Keynesian that's not Bernanke. Although I actually like Bernanke was more of a like self-righteous kind of prick, and who was like he was like the epitome of like the know-it-all central banker. But his academic work is actually pretty good if you read it. I think the reason people like Greenspan is because Greenspan was actually a nicer guy. Like when you read Ron Paul and the Fed, like Ron Paul was actually able to talk with Greenspan reasonably, and they kind of had like sort of a mutual agree to disagree kind of thing. Bernanke was always kind of a dick. That's sort of my understanding of it. I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, Bernanke is a Jew, so that could explain some things.
I mean, wasn't Greenspan too though? Like, haven't they all been?
I'm not even joking. Are you saying there's some kind of connection here? Anyway, do you find the video?
Oh, of Rationality Rules, yeah. And apparently, I don't know. I guess he likes Molyneux because he started with like, I like a lot of Molyneux's work, but a bad argument is a bad argument.
Oh yeah, I see. Okay, now I know who you're talking about. Now that I looked him up.
Yeah, so it's like, I don't know. Maybe if it's the debunking of UPB from another libertarian perspective, then I suppose it's not going to be quite as autistic as I originally made it out to be. But
I don't think he is a libertarian, though.
Yeah, from what I remember, he's kind of pointing out some of the same things that I've seen other people point out. That like his proofs is basically he focuses on the proofs for UPB, and the proofs for UPB like tend to be mostly begging the question.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's pointing that out. And I know Anarcho-Pac made similar videos about it. I've seen a lot of other people point this out too. I've seen David Gordon point this out before too. So.
Wait. Greenspan is a Jew, but he's a good kind of Jew. He's not ex-Nazi. He's just an Eastern European Jew.
He's not Ask-a-Nazi?
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't have that high verbal IQ thing.
Oh.
Yeah, he's not Nazi Jew.
He's not Ben Shapiro, what you're saying.
Huh?
He's not Ben Shapiro, is what you're saying.
is Ben Shapiro an Ashkenazi? I know Noam Chomsky is.
He is kind of he has Ashkenazi IQ, that's for sure. He's still dishonest fuck, but yeah.
Yeah, Bernanke. Okay, let's see if Bernanke is a Ashkenazi.
I think
Ask
that's
a
a yes.
Nazi.
Guys, identity politics is bad, but you have to support Israel and Zionism, guys. Otherwise, you're anti-Semitic, Goyim.
Nice.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, it doesn't matter. They're both Jewish. So, it doesn't matter what branch they come from, you know.
No, but I was gonna say something before. I forget what I was gonna say though. Fuck. What were we talking about before? We got into like naming them.
I think with UPB,
Yeah.
Yes, it was something about
Molly being a cult leader.
after that.
UPB being the proofs or something like that. I don't know.
And we were just talking about the Jews.
Or
So,
was it
before the proofs, and before I looked up before we mentioned the video for a second time? What were we talking about?
apples are red, cars are sometimes red like apples, therefore cars
Oh no,
are
yes.
free.
Oh yes, okay, yes. So, I actually got something out of that. Okay, with the because we were talking about like fucking syllogisms and how you can theorize anything if you don't test it against the real world, and that's like the problem with Austrian praxeology and stuff like that. Like, I agree. Like, what the Austrians have essentially done is said like, well, we've come up with this concept of economics as a logical system. Therefore, anything that is illogical based on our a priori assumptions, it can't be economics. And I was going to mention this because Robert Murphy was in a debate with Robert Selgin, and they're talking about like claims on money, and it's like, well, can you have well, the bank has, and Robert Selgin was making the case for not full reserve, but a sort of free banking fiat currency, like competing fiat currencies, kind of like Hayek did at some point. And he was saying, well, you can have free banks that are full reserve and fractional reserve. And, obviously the case had to be made as like, how can you, use free, how can fractional reserve banking work? And George essentially said that, well, you have a claim on the money, but the bank also has a claim on the money. And Bob Murphy's response, which was very telling, was, well, that doesn't make economic sense. And George Selgin went on to say, well, no, this is the law. This is how it works. This is effectively what the legal precedent is. It was the legal precedent throughout Europe. This is how banking was established. But Bob Murphy kept going back to that. It's like, no, that's not economics. And it made me sort of understand that like these like Austrians only think of it in economics in a philosophical sense, and not in like a legal pragmatic sort of sense, because like it doesn't matter whether or not you think it's economically possible. And the fact of the matter is that's how it works. Both you have a claim on the money and the bank has a claim on the money simultaneously. That is how fractional reserve has worked for the past X hundred number of years, or, well, not even, depending on when you consider the birth of fractional reserve banking to be. But, that's just the reality of it. And it sort of made me realize, like, they say, oh, there's no such thing as public property. There's just state property. It was like, no, it's effectively public property. Just because you're saying it's the state property doesn't make it so based on your logic. It's like there's this complete absence of actually wanting to test your ideas and actually, giving them a rigorous real world run through.
Yeah, you have to test things against the real world. I'm sorry, you just have to. And even Austrians try to do it, but then they will say things like, well, that's not economics. It's just economic history. That's what all that stuff is.
Like there's a lot of, like you're saying, I don't buy into the meme that they're like completely anti-empirical, but they're not as empirical as they should be. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's why I kind of definitely kind of shifted over. Maybe there are Austrians that do, but I've kind of shifted more towards the kind of Chicago thought public choice thought. Slightly neoclassicals. Some of them I like a lot more, but like Brian Kaplan is great. Friedman is great. David Friedman, that is.
Yeah.
There was a really good debate between David Friedman and Bob Murphy, which I highly recommend. Highly recommend.
Hey, also, we never talked about Yaki and his thoughts.
Who?
Francis Parker Yaki, like Ego was talking about him on
we were talking about him though.
I mean, I just want to go back to the Spangler Yaki conversation.
Well, keep a consistent thought, man. You always do this.
Well, no. To be fair to Volt was trying to bring this up before, and you and me, Elmo, kind of like talked him down. So, what were you trying to say?
Because he deserved it.
Wow.
Hey, wait. Before we move on, can you define what is a friend?
Okay, Jordan Black Peterson.
Oh God.
Okay, Jordan Black Peterson. Let's take it easy here.
It depends on what you find friend. If you're talking about the metaphysical kind of nihilistic kind of view of what things are, then yeah, I guess I do have many friends. Are they real friends?
Speaking about metaphysics,
can men and women really be friends? I don't know.
Can we talk about the metaphysics of rape, guys? Come on.
Okay, but back on Yaki.
The metaphysics of rape, guys. Come on.
Okay,
someone asked if Styx is a Satanist. He's not. He used to be though.
Yeah, now he just practices some fucking
occultism.
Yeah, he's an occultist. Yeah. Which is, I think, the occult is interesting, but.
Okay, back on Yaki. Yaki was. He was definitely. Imperium is definitely the sequel to Decline of the West, or is it the Death of the West? It's
Decline.
Okay, Decline of the West. I spoke to this guy who's extremely well read. His name is The Decadent Perspective. I streamed with him. I highly recommend the stream if you're interested. He explains that the main thesis of Imperium is cultural distortion, or one of the bigger points of Imperium is cultural distortion on cultural parasitism. And he sort of, one of the interesting things is that he views Marxism as this distorter of sorts. And even in the preface of the book, this author, I forgot what his name was, sort of just go over how Marx basically used economics to justify his worldview. And that's just basically going to that argument. I thought that was also interesting. Just Yaki. The thing about Yaki is how can I describe him? He was very, he's a very good writer. He's very polemical. He's like, he viciously attack liberalism, rationalism, and enlightenment. And these chapters go so fast. Like, it's very polemical, concise, deep. It's just, he goes over what he calls the laws of sovereignty. Like, he basically views the state and culture as an organism, as a living and breathing thing. Is like he empathized organism a lot throughout the text. And he probably said that during a lot of it. It's just the thing about Yaki is he took this very organic and spiritual view on cultural and the state, on liberalism, and he just able to he's able to articulate where he feels that liberalism went wrong. He is explicitly critical of capitalism. He also wrote another book called Europe, where I think he actually advocates that they should cite that Yaki was trying to bring right wing and left wing groups to side with Russia, because he viewed the West, the United States, to be virtually dead, not worth preserving, is rather interesting. Like on the United States, he took a very harsh view on the United States. He criticized the United States in his own words being culturally retarded, and went over the history and the spirit of the United States, like very concisely. Like it's a very good, concise history of the United States. And he went over how it wasn't really a nation, how it was very naturally imperialistic and expansionist. And he also had a chapter about the about the Negro in America. Just he did not say anything. He did not say anything nice about that. But it's just if I can boil this down to, it's basically preserving Western civilization from cultural distortions, from cultural parasitism, like to suppress it, allowing the organism to live. And there's this quote from Games of Thrones saying, "Kill the boy so the man can live," something like that. I think that can perfectly describes Yaki. Just it's very esoteric in his arguments and how he sees the world, how he sees the laws, how he ultimately sees sovereignty. I need to reread them because it's just kind of just hard to explain. Any thoughts or just?
I need to read more.
Try read Steven Pinker, The Battle Angel of Our Nature.
Steven Pinker. I mean, I want to read the Blank Slate, but I don't know if I want to read The Better Angels, to be honest.
This book is awful.
Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, it's awful. Like this book is absolutely awful.
Yeah, I heard a lot of bad things about it. There's some really good critiques about it. So
it's so. Rodin is right. Like he is like Kant. Like he's the modern version of Kant. And just
Who is now?
Steven Pinker.
I don't like Kant, but I'm not willing to give Pinker that much of a compliment.
No, it's not a compliment. It was in a very insulting manner.
Read this one.
You're gay because you put Evola on my string.
Come on.
You're gay.
I mean, we have to do a reading about this one day. So
no, you gotta follow that like reading list that what's their names put up on like the Black Sun group or whatever. Fucking, I have the picture somewhere on my phone, but it's like the Evola reading guide. Like that's what you got to do. Like you got to like that's how you get like the fullness of Evola, and so that's how I'm doing it. So I'm starting with whatchamacallit,
what were you saying the
Grail.
other day, Bolt? What were you saying the other day?
What's up?
What were you saying the other day, Bolt? You were what? You were riding the tiger?
Elmo, get your gross Hispanic fingers off the fucking screen. Jesus Christ.
Shut the fuck up, man.
Okay, this is the best book I read this year.
Wait, hold it up there a little bit.
Crash by the Animal Tools. I got his book, Wages Destruction.
Have you read Stiglitz's The Price of Inequality?
I want to read that book.
But I tried reading it, but I wasn't really that. I couldn't force myself to get interested in what Stiglitz has to say about inequality. But Tools' book Crash is basically a mix of financial and geopolitics history in recent times. One thing I have my big disagreement with Tools is his take on Obama's handling of the recession back in 08 and 09, the stimulus. I think that could be refuted. Like he basically said, it brought out a very stabilizing effect for the economy. I'm just gonna take the perspective that it just impeded economic growth in a sense, like way too much. It was very slow. Like Obama should have took more of a more Keynesian tax cut stimulus than this.
Well, it's like there's two sides to like demand side, kind of. There's like demand side and supply side justifications for tax cuts, and like a lot of more supply side solutions that Obama could have implemented but didn't because it would have seemed like caving to the right wingers, sort of. And
I don't like either of them. I'm more of an Desai's law.
That I'm gonna you're joking. Okay, good.
I think that we should abolish profit.
Yeah, man. You just abolish profit, and it's like you'll end greed, man, and fucking the sweatshops will stop, and like Chicago will be safe, and there will be no more gangs. And if we just legalize weed, man, it's like just get high, bro. Forget about life.
To be fair, I wouldn't be opposed to a distributed system. You know, I wouldn't be like opposed to that. I'm more
like you're talking about Catholic distributism.
Yeah, I wouldn't actually be opposed like too much to that. I mean, I know it's Catholic in the first place, and they suck. But yeah,
shut the fuck up. You're also a traitor to your race by not being Catholic. I hope you know that. Like you're no better than my Italian assistant scoutmaster who was also Protestant. Like being a Protestant and Hispanic, that's like a sin in an end of itself.
Yeah, whatever, dude. I mean, in the end, we are way better than you because, like I even had that study.
Whatever helps you.
Well, there is like this study that shows that the Protestants are better well off than the Catholics. So
the Catholics aren't materialists LARPing as LARPing as Christians.
So, Jim, are you gonna grow back your beard?
Are you gonna grow hair?
I really do like my job, and I don't want to upset it. That's why I shaved it off because I had to get a new job, and I was like, oh man. But I will say that y'all motherfuckers need Satan, all right? So,
God.
This book though, he has a chapter about Trump, and I thought that was very memorable because there's this really good quote about like he basically called Trump a Ponzi scheme capitalist. That's like the best description I ever heard about Trump.
Well, I've heard this description before because I don't know where, but I heard it levied at him in like some talk show when they mentioned this book, I guess. But like, whatchamacallit? Fucking, he wasn't a Ponzi scheme capitalist by his own doing. That was just the state of the real estate market at the time. Like, there's a good case to be made that a lot of people who were participating in it didn't actually know what was like, happening as it was going on. And so I think to like, just lump Trump in there and say, oh, well, because like, whatchamacallit, because he was engaged in the system at the time and the system at the time was like fucking topsy-turvy and very clearly broken. He's a Ponzi scheme capitalist. I don't think that's really fair.
No. I mean, the thing about Trump is that at this point, he like I said, there's a reason why even established Republicans don't even like him in the first place. And I think that's a good sign. That's not the only, like, indicator that he, what he is at the moment, he could probably be beneficial to the United States. But again, he's pissing off the right people. Of course, he's pissing off a lot of people now. But
why Trump again? Like, I wish he wasn't vocal.
What? Wait a minute, I didn't hear that. What do you mean that you didn't wish that he was what?
I wish Trump wasn't so vocal.
What are you talking about? That's kind of needed in today's politics, dude.
but it just gets kind of boring.
I don't know. I am liking a lot of Twitter.
Although I do love that meme when he threatened the Iranian president. That was classic.
Yeah, I love him on Twitter. That's the thing. Like he's always. I don't know. I prefer someone like that at least.
Also,
Honestly.
This is the classic that everybody should know.
Thomas Sowell, the classic.
I think this is the only time I'll ever say something like this regarding this particular person, but I'm actually happy that I have this particular copy of Adam Kokesh's book. And he wrote on there, "Fuck you, Jesus."
Oh,
so I win the day.
I have to say you do, but Adam Kokesh is a massive faggot who is
yeah, exactly.
Such a degenerate.
Because I was like, you better sign that "fuck you, Jim Jesus" on it because you're gonna hate me soon. And I did a whole podcast calling him a con artist.
Did you see whatchamacallit, his appearance on the Non Sequitur show at all?
I don't know what that is.
Oh, it's just like it's kind of like it's like an atheist talk show, but they talk a lot about other stuff like history and just general politics and like the flat earth. That's like their big thing. They have a lot of discussions about the flat earth for like, the millionth time. But I think, the guys are cool, so I'm not going to shit talk them. But like, if your audience is honestly entertained by the debunking of the flat earth for like the nth millionth time, I think that says something about, the type of people you're pandering to just a little bit. But
didn't you get on the bad side of the Non Sequitur show when you started, Chris? You calling Channing Q a thought?
Oh yeah, I called fucking what's her name up. It wasn't on that show, but it was. I called.
No, not on the show, but you went on Twitter, called her a thought, and then every single atheist,
Yeah,
how can you say that? How can you say that, dude? You're just a misogynist. That's a very poor taste of you.
It wasn't quite that limp dick of a comeback, but it was up there. There was a lot of white knighting, to be sure. It was like her making some sort of it was like her in like yoga clothes, and it's like, oh, me, I'm like in my yoga clothes, but I'm not.
She was showing cleavage.
Yeah, cleavage.
Yeah, she was showing cleavage, so it was literally a photo which she was just dotting around. So
yeah, it's like my exact tweet. I remember it was like, we must stop this atheist ethottery or something. That might have not been the exact tweet, but it was very much something along those lines. And she got really bent out of shape about it. And she's like, her response was something like "fuck you," and I kind of continued to egg her on about it. But it's like,
yeah, but the Non Sequitur show responded by saying, "I remember that I invited you a couple of weeks ago and said that you were a very nice person. And then I was completely wrong. You're just like the other lunatics that we invited to the show."
Yeah, no, it's like that kind of blew over real quick though, because they don't. There's like 3 or 4 people. There's like the 2 guys they have on stage or on the stream who I can't remember. And then there's like
Dave and Kyle.
Yeah, Dave and Kyle. I hope they don't hear that. What?
Steve.
Yeah, they got Steve in the background. I thought they had one other guy in the background too. Maybe they don't. But I think it's Steve who runs like the Twitter sometimes and manages that. But yeah, I think that was him who sent the tweet. So I don't think Kyle and Dave knew what I had said. But even so, like I did feel that was a rather harsh response. And, they kind of acknowledged it when I went on stream. Like, it was very clearly a joke, and they didn't seem to be bothered by it. I was very shocked that she took it so personally, perhaps because there was just a little bit too much truth in that. But I'm not going to
a little bit.
Well, I'm not going to poke the hornet's nest. I'm in relatively good standing.
I know that you're not going to do it because you're a pussy now, but I'm going to do it. She was studying around. If she shows any woman who shows cleavage around, that's what they're doing. That's specifically what they are trying to, they're trying to attract some audience to that level, and there's no denying it. And the thing is that she's a mom, and that's what makes it even more shameful. That's why I think that she actually did also took like an issue with it, because I don't know, like moms shouldn't do that at all.
They fucking like My friend picks up like, well, not my friend. It's kind of like a friend of a friend who is now sort of my friend because we hang out through our mutual friend together. But actually, no, never mind. It's just a friend. It's just a friend of a friend. I don't actually know this person personally. Never mind. I was thinking of someone else. But he picks up like, he uses Tinder because he's like a Chad, and so he can get all these chicks because he's in like the top 20% of dudes who are like the actual fucking Chads.
Mhm.
And so, but like one of the things is like, he's picked up moms on Tinder before, and it's like through my other friend, I've seen like pictures of him like in this woman's house, and it's like snapping pictures of like her second or third grade son's artwork about like why their mom in the bet is like the best and things like that. And it's like,
Jesus.
I know it's like really depressing. And it's like, oh, come on, man. This is like,
This is the state of modern man, and
I know, like this is degeneracy, man. Have some standards.
Apparently it's a little bit too extreme for Jordan Peterson to say enforce monogamy, while this is the preferable sort of alternative.
Actually,
for
I
these
never
people.
did understand why Godless Cranium was so hard against that, because Jordan Peterson didn't really prescribe a policy.
Look, all right, hold on. I want to say something to this effect right now, and I want you to send me the clip of this, Volt, because this is true. The people who, I'm not saying everybody understands Jordan Peterson perfectly, because he speaks in sort of a pseudo-esoteric language. And that's fine if you want to misunderstand what Jordan Peterson is saying. But the only people who attribute malicious intent to what Jordan Peterson were saying were those who already don't like Jordan Peterson. Like, you'll never find someone who's like just neutral on Jordan Peterson, who's like, this seems kind of weird, but I don't know what it means, so I'm not going to assume there's meaning to it. But everybody who already has a preconceived bias against Peterson will immediately assume malicious intent. And it's very, very, very clear, because I've yet to see Peterson, someone who's neutral on Peterson or someone who is genuinely like a fan of Peterson misunderstand Peterson and attribute something negative to the quote that was misunderstood or the passage that was misunderstood. Only the people who already don't like Peterson because of the benign stuff he says that they don't like will attribute malice to something that he says that they don't, that is generally might be misunderstood. Only the people who want Jordan Peterson to be bad will make what he's saying look bad. And that's like, without exception, I found that to be the case. And it's like, I'm not a shill for Jordan Peterson. The guy's wrong on some stuff. He's not a philosopher. He's a psychologist. And I'm happy to disagree with him on philosophical terms, but his psychology is right. And just because you don't like his psychology doesn't mean that what he's saying is wrong. And it doesn't mean what he's saying is inherently something bad or evil.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's what I mentioned about a lot of these anti-deists who talk about against Jordan Peterson, is that the way that they approach him is more of just like they approach creationists instead of a psychologist. They're not understanding. They don't understand their own opponents in the first place, but they do know that he's saying the same thing as other Christians are saying. So they have to be against it. They have to be against this, what they would probably perceive as illegitimate authority or something like that. And so that's why they're like very uncharitable towards what Peterson says. It's I don't know. That's the way that at least that I see how these people are responding to. It's just the fact that they just view him as a Christian and someone who set them like rules and all that. Like just look at what's their name? The people from Bible Reloaded, Hugo and Jake. Like they're doing a video series on like the book the Peterson's book 12 Rules of Life or something.
Oh God.
And it's they're completely missing the mark and all that. And the first video, it was an introduction to who Jordan Peterson was, and they basically misrepresented every position that he has regarding like free speech and all that. They say that Peterson is just an old man who's just trying to enforce Christianity and to the people. He's not from another Christian. And then when they go into the book, they literally are just they don't understand anything about what Peter. They think that they do, but literally they don't know shit.
You're in Friended's server, right, Elmo?
Yeah.
Yes, it's like you've seen their video responses, like Sitch and Adam do video responses to Hugo and Jake, and it's like,
Yeah.
it's so very clear. It's like, Adam agrees with Jordan Peterson, but not on some sort of principle. He's a guy who very much sort of, he's kind of like,
Adam says, like most of it is that they just approaching him like he's another Christian instead of like, look, Peterson actually offers like, he's a psychologist, so he offers like some level of evidence to support like certain positions that or something that he's putting out. Why humans interact this way and all that. Whatever.
yeah, and it's like Adam follows him because Adam doesn't. He's not like Ryan Falk in that he has no underlying sort of moral tenet, but he's very much an evidence-driven guy, and that's the thing. Peterson has the evidence. Like these people, like the only people who challenge Peterson are like the legitimate kind of leftists, like Jeff Holiday, who, well, he's not a legitimate leftist, but he's like a left liberal, and it's like, he's the only people like Jeff Holiday are the guys who are like questioning things like, oh, is IQ science valid, and is this really a good predictive shit? And it's like none of the guys like
And generally, he doesn't question his wife sleeping with other women for some reason, but whatever. Keep going.
But yeah, that too. But like, none of them are making factual arguments against Peterson in any sense. Like, they're not disagreeing with this idea that we need some sort of religion as a social cohesion. We all behave religiously. We all IQ is a good determinant of stuff, yada yada yada. Although they don't really get into that because that's not their wheelhouse. But like, you look at Nightmare Fuel, who did a stream on one of Jim knows where this is going, because it's Nightmare Fuel and it's really easy to predict all of his shit because he's not creative and he's not talented. What?
I have a feeling I already know what you're going to say. What
yeah.
you're going to say he said.
Well, all of Nightmare Fuel's videos are him stating what somebody else said in the worst, least charitable light possible, then smugly stating his opinion and acting as if it's correct. I mean, but besides that, his stream on like Jordan Peterson and like Friended's videos, it's like, oh, well, the way you're defining religious would make the word meaningless. Well, I don't act religiously. You're just diluting the meaning. It's like, what ANCAPs do with like logical fallacy, or what other anti-theists do with logical fallacy. It's like, this is a fallacy. Oh, you're just talking like a con artist, which is something I think Cosmic Skeptic did, or Genetically Modified Skeptic did a video. I was like, Jordan Peterson's a con artist.
Yeah, that video.
Yeah,
that video. That video got almost like close to 100,000 views. That's kind of
it's like none of it is engaging with the argument. It never is. It's all this bullshit of like logical fallacy. Oh, my opinion on the subject. You're diluting the definition. It's semantics. It's literally peak semantics, and it's fucking dumb.
It just
Peterson is using Peterson is using Jungian, psychology to support his conservative views. That was literally the thing that Genetically Modified Skeptic ended up saying in some part of his video on why Peterson is a quack. Well, he's like, what? No, that's not what Peterson actually said. I mean, Peterson usually just talks about the Jungian perspective and all that, and
I don't. God looks crazy, man. It's like, I don't know, just my relation, like I really just don't understand this fetishization of human reason from these anti-theists. Like in theory, they will be empiricists, but they're really rationalists.
They're not. No. They try. They try to be empiricists for the most part, even though they call themselves. Some of them call themselves rationalists. But the thing about I don't think they even understand how epistemology works in the first place. That's the thing. They just jumped into this topics in itself because they just didn't like Christians telling them what to do. They don't have like a a set of principles firm or anything like that. I don't think most of them haven't actually thought through a lot of why do they believe in the things they believe, or like
Yes.
is philosophically wise and all that.
Right now, I'm just thinking about that treat that Godless sent me that we talked about a bit earlier. Just
Yeah, look at it. Look at this. So Godless Engineer says that he and other entities just value truth, and that truth should be valued no matter what in many ways. That you shouldn't. They also said something on the likes that even if religion has its like benefits in itself, we shouldn't value lies, even if it does have like positive effects on people. Now the thing is that one thing that really just I tried questioning Godless Cranium, but he didn't respond to the. He did understood what I said was
He
that
has
okay.
so many people muted. It is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like he just chooses not to engage on such a massive level.
Yeah, and so like I asked him like, hey, if you value truth and you don't think that well being the mental well being of people don't justify having some quote unquote lies in itself. So why do you support like transgender people in the first place? I mean, let's be real. If you're an empiricist in itself and you value truth and knowledge, and they should be put for be put
Oh, I remember
forth
this.
and all that, and so considering that gender is not necessarily a social construct, or even if it is, it's still connected biologically to one's sex and all that. Well, so why would you and so why would you support like transgender people? You do know that it's basically what they're are living is a lie in itself. But the reason why you refer them as the gender that they want is for their well, according to them, is for their mental well being. So I don't think that these people actually do. Like when I told this to Godless Cranium, he's like, "No, there's no contradiction here, guys. It's just that it's just supporting the rights for transgender people does not mean that I don't value that I don't value truth. That's wrong." And like, what? No, you completely missed the point here. I'm saying that if you
Yeah.
do value truth and it's absolute or whatever it is, then you shouldn't be in the position of supporting like trans people. Because because literally what you're doing is you're supporting a lie for the mental well-being in this case.
I
And
think someone said it like very recent. Oh no, I know where I was reading. I've been reading Bronze Age Pervert's book, and it's a very good book. I highly recommend it. But
yes.
It's I was reading a section where he's talking about like the whole first section is kind of spirituality and like the original religion, sort of, kind of, to put it vaguely, and he talks about like atheists, and he talks about their support of like the transgender and things like that. And one, he talks about how they're not really relativists. They all have some objective moral code that they live by, that Jordan Peterson describes as their central axiom, but that's not really true. Or well, it is true, but they refuse to acknowledge it. And then he talks about how they like to pretend not only are they not relativists, but they're also not materialists, really, because they support these things like transgenderism and like all these body modification stuff. Well, it's like they support all these things under the guise of human rights, because at the end of the day, they're all really idealists who just believe it's like we're all flesh suits piloted by the intellect or whatever. And because of that, it doesn't matter what we do to our bodies. So, even though they pretend that there's just matter and that's it, they're willing to forsake the matter when it disagrees with the intellect, which is an unquantifiable sort of supernatural force. And so, Bronze Age Pervert essentially counts atheists with two kinds of fraud, or two counts of lying to themselves. One, they lie to themselves ethically because they're not really relativists. And two, they're lying to themselves metaphysically because they're not really materialists. And so it was a very interesting commentary, and it's an awesome book. So, like, I don't know. I don't know who the fuck.
Also, have you noticed that he misrepresent like everybody that goes against him, like in the worst possible fashion?
Yeah, that's what we said. Like, and again, like I try asking him about the transgender thing, and all he was like was basically saying that I'm not supporting lie. Supporting rights doesn't entail a lie.
Not that, just just in general, like everybody, when people just have a disagreement with him, like how he handles like really smart theists such as classical theists or societism. Just, it's just like he just always argues in this bad faith, this really arrogant faith. Like, he's probably not like that in real life or even on his YouTube
Well,
channel.
he never says anything substantial, and he only does just this. The only thing he does is just counter signal and just moral fag.
Yeah, it's like
that's all he does.
You said it best, Elmo, in one of your tweets earlier when you said all he does is sort of paraphrase Dawkins and he doesn't contribute anything.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's like, he alone isn't guilty of this, of course. This is him in the larger anti-theist, atheist community, sort of. Like, they ran out of, once fundamentalist Christians, sort of lost the plot or at least went out of fashion in, like, 2004 to 2008, and then Obama took over, and like nobody really took him seriously. Like, they didn't have much to do, and obviously this precipitated the split between atheism and atheism plus, yada yada yada. But the skeptics, the atheist plus people, none of them are talking about things that are new and relevant and like interesting. And it's like, that's why the new right and the new left are rising, because they're talking about stuff people really want to get into, like the biological reality of race, what it says about how a society can function. You have the more spiritual right-wingers who are talking about like the making of like, a greater spiritual reality and things like this. But, new atheism is completely, they'll never engage with those things because they don't recognize those things as real, even though they are 100% completely real.
Yeah, it's just at this point they're just really just stuck in early 2000s, so sort of topics and all that. That really they're not looking for. They're only looking for things to just be how what's the word? I don't know. I'm just saying like they're not. It's not growing. They're not building up anything. They just think that the arguments were already done. That's the thing about them. It's like, no, we already know that God doesn't exist, and we have to just keep pushing people, just putting in the proof and and all that, push science and stuff like that. They think that all of the arguments have already been solved for the most part. Well, not all of them, because they kind of recognize that science is still. There's still a lot more to the natural world that we don't understand, but that the arguments regarding like God and all that, they all of them have already been made, and that all of them have been debunked, and all they have to do is just keep promoting, truth or something like that, and they're not necessarily building up anything, and that's where they kind of are stuck at the moment. And sure, like atheism plus came and all that divided them, but even then, they're still, for the most part, just like I said, they just stagnated at this point because they already think it's the what's the thing? It's done. They think that the debate is done in itself in some ways. And
there's a reason why Reese is more willing to entertain friended forever than someone like classical theists or Mauritian struggles. Yes.
I think that Reese thinks that Mauritian struggle is a creationist.
Well, fucking Reese doesn't know what a creationist is. Like, I've tried to have this discussion with him about like, well, let's argue about the existence of God, and it's like, oh no, it always goes back to a creationist debate. Like that, if you, I'm losing myself here in anger, but like there's creationism, like the Earth is 6,000 years old. God literally did it all in 7 days. The universe is 6,000 years old. Flat Earth, yada yada yada. But that's not what most Christians are. When they talk about God creating the universe, they're willing to accept that Genesis is just allegory, and most of what's in the opening chapters of Genesis are allegory for man's natural spiritual state as a material being, and that these stories are allegories that, sort of like Jordan Peterson says, but a bit more philosophical, are like representatives of moral states and moral conundrums that humans face as they, wander the material plane. But, to Reese, that's far too nuanced for him. It's always going to be, is this real? Do you think God exists, and do you think he created everything? Oh, well, then you're a creationist, and I'm not going to have this debate, because in my mind and to my smug self, it's been settled.
You're
because
just
I'm
deluded.
a fucking smug jackass.
You're just deluded because you believe in a sky daddy. That's basically the position that he has.
No,
that's why he doesn't. That's why he doesn't like.
He doesn't. Like, he just always just assert his opinion as fact and make these assertions, make these arguments against these people or isolationists, or even just in politics in general. Like, how he deals with politics, how he approaches with politics is so caustic.
How he approaches everything is that way.
Yeah.
Like he made this video where he was going through one of my Twitter threads where I was saying, basically to the extent like I said that, look, if you get rid of religion, all of these dangerous religions that are happening right now, like Islam and the terrible things that other religions do, all of these people will just go, okay, that reason for doing this is not justified anymore. Let's find other secular reasons for doing so.
And that's actually true. I remember in a cut philosophy video that was critiquing the moral landscape, and this guy brought up this Suicide Squad, the suicide bombers who were totally secular in the secular. In the somewhere in the
it was a response to Sam Harris. Sam Harris said that the reason why Muslims do terrorist attacks is because they're Islam requires them, tells them to do so. And then someone actually did responded to him by saying, then why do the secular, that I forgot what was the name of the terrorist group. Why does this secular organization cause terror attacks if they don't believe in God or anything like that?
Well, they're not really secular. Let me just dilute the definition of religion so I can appear to be smart and reasonable while you appear to be really unreasonable and my fundamentals. Why are you challenging me on my definition of well-being? Why? Why
are you apologizing for Islam?
I mean, why?
He kept accusing me of being an Islam apologist. I was like, no. I even said in that thread that Islam sucks. I was like, but if you get rid of their God, all they're going to do is just find secular reasons for doing so. They're probably going to join some Marxist outfit. There's been plenty of terrorist Marxists or outfits, successful ones like the Tamil Tigers, that have pulled off really terrible terrorist attacks.
But they're not really secular. Like, you're misusing language. How? Like, you're not being.
Well, Marxism is basically a religion. It's like, okay, then we're done here. I don't know what else to say.
Jim. One Pope said that Marxism is cool, so that means that Marxism can be compatible with Christianity and other religions like that. No, that it can't. Marxism is not secular humanism, guys. It's not real secular humanism.
Actually, that's a strange thing about recent Marxism. Like, there's definitely
is the real racists. No.
That's the thing with recent Marxism. Like, he's willing to reject the anti-theist aspects of Marxism because he doesn't want this. I'm just like, dude, like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's true. Move on. Like, it shouldn't bother you. It shouldn't bother you because it doesn't represent
the same thing happened with Galdus Cranium when someone mentioned to him that communism is a secular humanist idea. He just said, no, Christians can be Marxist, so you're wrong.
Just because the Pope says some really stupid things about communism doesn't make it as Catholic doctrine.
Well, the thing is that, again, like, they're just going to be they're not going to accept it either way. They already have their bias already set on this. Like, they're not going to accept the fact that secular people have done things under that were bad under the name of secular humanism. they may say, well, there were maybe some individuals, but they're not representative of secular humans. So they can try all that. They're going to do all that. That's what they're going to do.
Well, yeah, this is the core of the distributive debate with Godless Engineer again. Oh, secularism is only us advocating for you to not do certain things. Therefore, anything that people do cannot be attributed to secularism because secularism only makes you not do things. And so it's like, all right, well, then we can't test it against anything because maybe you could say certain stuff that religion makes you do are bad, but if all secularism does is has you do nothing, well, then we don't know if it's good or bad because you're not doing anything. There's like nothing for us to test against.
It ends up being if your ideology is incapable of doing anything bad, then it is also incapable of doing anything good. So it's useless. It is completely useless in itself.
But Elmo and Pragmatic culture, like you're both misusing language. Like
Shut the fuck up, Bolt.
Like why are you not getting this? Like I'm supposed to be the reasonable atheist, and you guys are just throwing all your presupposition in and just arguing the straw man. I cannot allow this.
Well, religion is the worst thing that has ever happened to humanity. Nazism and communism, they're basically religions too, though. So I mean,
hey, some of these people have said that like the feminism is a religion in itself. I remember like when some of these people were talking, we're looking, the sort of were not very fond of the feminist movements, at least the ones that were really loud. That's what they like responded as. Like they say that feminism has become a religion. That's what they said. So like even like it's not. That's what they're going to attribute. Anything that they see as bad, they're going to. Well, not anything, but when they see people acting as a group and they don't like what that group is doing, they're going to attribute it as being being a religion in itself or a cult. I think the word that they use for most of these occasions is actually cult.
You want to end this? You want to end the stream here? Like it's getting like to midnight.
Well, hold on. I just want to ask Jim real quick. What is your? I mean, obviously you've had your little spats with these people, but from the Satanist perspective, what's like, what do you say? What do you say to these people? Just like bow down and accept the Dark Lord?
No. First of all, I think I need to reestablish that I don't believe in a Dark Lord. Okay, so I just tell them y'all motherfuckers need Satan.
Okay, I hope everybody has a good weekend and hail Satan.
Yeah, hail Satan.
Hail Satan, I guess. Not
really.
Now
to Discord.
Okay.